My father told me when I was a child, people in authority lie.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions.
Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Sunday, October 5th, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Well, a very important story to report on today. That is something that has been developing, that we've been covering from a very broad two-party illusion perspective. Now, I contemplated starting the show today in a sort of a skit or a play, as if because of the story we're going to discuss, we now know that it proves the other side. But I felt like it was more important just to be straightforward as always. But the point would have been to sort of, lay out how clearly it may feel like it makes sense, but recognize the principle, the reality of why saying that these two girls we're going to discuss today that were ran over by a person who's on video saying that, at least in some degree, the reason that they were talking SHIT, saying bad things about Charlie Kirk, was why he ultimately ran them over with his car. It's a developing story. So as always, there's things that could change up in the air. But what's interesting is, I've already seen people come out and do that from the left, I guess, from what you can glean from what you see them say online, which is not necessarily verifiable, right? That's my point in a lot of this, is that people have I'm a good example of that, which is why I was kind of thinking about starting that way, is that people seem to place me. But if you watch this show long enough, you'll recognize that my principle is what guides me. And it's, depending on the topic, it's kind of all over the place. That's how I think it should be for everybody. But what I see is people now pointing at this story and saying, we knew it. It's really the right. They're the real terrorists and they're the problem, which is, in my opinion, the exact same problem. Just as problematic, just as alarming, despite except for the fact that there's momentum right now around the right with Trump and the Republicans in power. Of course, unless you recognize that it's really one government. My point is, from the individuals who buy into that, there's momentum there. Either way, it's the same problem. Creating the idea that first of all, that parts of this country just who have political ideas that are different are terrorists or the problem, or need to be removed or censored or change their minds in some way. All the things that would be called out if the other side was doing the same thing. And then, as well as the fact that it builds to allow the government to create the air of that and then apply it to anyone they want, to censor, to do any number of things. So it is a very important and quite alarming story today. And it's important to stress from the beginning that we'll go through this in regard to what you may think his political standing is. And I don't think, as always, you can prove it unless there's some obvious connection. There's clear, suggestive points, which, especially with this political conversation, tend to be pretty, somewhat accurate. But you can't claim you know for a fact that someone is a Republican or is a Democrat, or even let alone part of some network organized version of those things, which is not the same as most people that they're calling some terrorist network across the country. But you can't know this for sure. Whether or not they like Trump or had a Trump flag, this is subjective today. And it's guiding a lot of people who think they're at the highest level of this conversation. And it's alarming. But that this person will talk about, it's pretty clear that he the way that the online community works around this, it's easy to see that people fall into certain ideas, which, by the way, the reality is freedom of speech, your freedom of ideology, freedom to look at what you want. But we know that the way that these things operate, I argue, because of the way this is kind of set up, because of the driving people into dark corners of this on purpose, because of censorship, that people end up falling into things that I think are sort of engineered that way. Not even to say that that's what this kid was, but we'll get into the alarming point of this story and why it is the continuation of the same problem. That, if that indeed this person did do this because they were saying bad things about Charlie Kirk, it doesn't then make the other side justified. It doesn't make all it shows you is that this is the reason we can't allow the government to create, what's the best way to say it? The government to put us in positions where we essentially see each other as the problem, as opposed to the government that's censoring, in a general sense, whatever side we're pointing to. And just to care that, we'll get into it all as we go through it, but that it's just, we're losing a bit of our humanity through all of this. Just the empathy that we should all have. That's not some woke lefty thing. Like, it's just crazy the way that our politics break our logic and just who we are as a species, but that we should just care, whether it's immigration or anybody else. You can decide in what way or if at all that circumvents or is more important than the law. That's an individual point for you to decide. But we can't lose our empathy and care about, whether it's a war criminal president that has committed atrocities around the world. I make that joke all the time. Somebody like that passes and you go, well, it makes, or more better way to say it is something like Biden, who makes this clumsy mistake. And it's like, you feel bad because he's an old guy, but then you go, yeah, but he's a war criminal. So kind of, but I still care at the end of the day. And that's what really matters, that I'm hoping we can all recognize that we all, and as I always argue, I think most of us are in that camp, and that they're so desperate to drive us into positions where we lose that because it's easier to manipulate us. But we're going to talk about that as a kind of a large part of the story today, of what this story is and how it connects to what's going on in this country, and then make a very, very clear connected point to what I think is the largest driving force of that within this country, and to some degree, why. Well, we're going to go over some points around Israel and the Freedom Flotilla that I want you to see, as well as the updates on the illusion of the ceasefire, which has never really stopped, the infiltration point, some points around two-party illusion, and the real big connected point, I think, is the digital ID surveillance. It's expanding in such a way that is hard. There's so much happening right now at one time that it's very easy to miss how much of this continues to change every single day. From around the world, digital IDs, UK, EU in general, just on a rapid scale when it comes to that, surveillance, digital money, but how that all it's impossible to decouple that global conversation from the group committing the most obvious brazen genocide I've ever seen in my life, as well as the fact that they seem to be proud of it. And I'm talking about the Zionist Israeli government and companies that they run through their intelligence that are now being used to arm and basically facilitate what ICE is doing in this country. All sorts of Israeli spyware now being used on Americans that are directly tied back to their Unit 8200 companies. And you can prove throughout history that they've used those to siphon off information that don't care about your rights, don't care about the government. And this is happening everywhere. And then we'll, of course, talk about a very important point around the continuation of that throughout ICE's deployment, and then some points around what is ultimately happening, possibly Portland, Illinois, and that conversation. As well as in the next show, we'll get into some more immigration that I pulled off for today that I think is important. You're pretty well versed on where the Garcia point and everything else. Just in case you didn't see the update, we'll get into the next show. Another court ruling came out and called the smuggling charge vindictive, was the word they used. Remember, the DHS came out with their tweet saying, after they ruled they could be deported, has everything else they claim, from MS-13 to smuggling, human trafficking, rapists. They've made all of this up. In the court, there's elements like, for example, the wife calling, but the reality of the evidence they're pointing to is completely absent, and it's come out every single time they've gone in front of court. And then they win in regard to, or it's not, they get a positive step toward removing him, and then they post that he's all of these things, rapist, MS-13. That's the Department of Homeland Security. These people are children, the way that they're responding. Anyway, we'll get to that more in the next show, but realize that these are the people we're dealing with. If you think that's unique to one side or the other, you're missing the plot here. The reality is our government has been diminishing in a really obvious way in this recent so many years, but for quite a long time. So let's get into why. Now, before we get into everything today, I want to start off with shouting a couple points out. Again, I forgot to mention, we were talking about the free speech episode yesterday, and I really just want to make sure you guys don't miss some of the newer shirts that we have on here. This one's in particular, the Free Speech Absolutist shirt, which is one of my favorites. I wear it all over the place. I support the Last American Vagabond on the back. Really just the idea of showing people, that this is a line for you. It's a principled line. It's not, it shouldn't even need to say absolutist. Free speech is what that means. But weirdly enough, people have these weird dividing lines about where free speech ends. And so apparently they don't understand what free speech means, right? Plenty of other things on here, different colors as well, but Big Frog, the platform, shout out to them. Lots of shirts you can get here. And by the way, including on the website, some of all the other shirts as well. Now, I just went yesterday, had a great, I guess it was called Farm and Fellowship. Crossing Creeks Farms in Shelby, Tennessee. Now, I've been there many times, and I've overlapped. Catherine Austin Fitz is a big advocate for the location. And so when she comes in town, I tend to see her there, and we meet and, support this farm. And I've never really brought it up. I think I've mentioned it more in the past, but it's in Tennessee. And since we have a global audience, I tend to, my point is, I really want to make sure we're shouting them out for those that are in Tennessee. This has got to be one of the most, this forum is doing all the right things for all the right reasons and paying the price for it, like many are today. We were just there yesterday. They were talking about, they had a person from Weston A. Price talking about whole milk and the legalities around it and what's going on around the country, and just had a really great overall conversation. Catherine was interviewed about the digital ID. She referenced my totalitarian tiptoe. This, I'll just show you really quickly. I'll have it up already. This, what I did for her platform, which was really just a shortened version of my totalitarian technocratic, tiptoe, play on David Icke's totalitarian tiptoe episode about all that information. The point is that we were there. We talked about all of that stuff. All that's to say is that this forum is going out of its way to do everything it can to help people all across the country for when it comes to anything around the health conversation. I mean, everyone you name, my point is just make sure people like this, groups like this, you're supporting. Whether you're in Tennessee or not, find something, groups that are connected, groups that are doing the same thing in your area, or as Steve talks about with Slim in regard to meat. And it's about doing these things the right way. And of course, we're being penalized for it. Like with my platform, what we do, we get penalized for doing things the right way for the right reasons, because that's what they're afraid of. Power structures. Overall, go out of your way. Drive a little bit extra if it means helping them, buying food from their location, spending a little bit more, because at the end of the day, as Catherine was saying in this recent conversation, a lot of people speak out loud and genuinely want to push back against the control grid and what's coming, but yet then invest in things that help that, right? Then continue to use the groups that fund things that we don't like, and and then act like we're all against it. We have to start self-reflecting on the choices we make day in and day out, and the money we use. Vote with your dollar, and whether it goes to the right people for the right reasons, and people that are actively fighting for the vision of the world that we want in every facet of our lives. And I know it's not that simple. There's many different things in our lives that may make that complicated. All I'm saying is do your best to try in this kind of direction. One last thing on that note, I just thought it was important to point out, or two things actually. Thomas Massey said the best thing about government shutdowns, no chemtrails. Now, whether that's entirely accurate or not, I noticed the same thing. Zero, even though it's almost every single day where we are. Weird how that suddenly got, well, what does that show you? Yeah, we're being lied to, as I think literally everybody with a brain knows. I mean, it's been admitted for the most part, but the idea that they pretend like that's, contrails or whatever. No, they're anyway, stopping, I guess, but the bottom line is it will continue because they don't care about the legislation. And I think it is to some degree still happening in places where this is, black budget, whatever else. But it's an important point to think about. There are a lot of things that we don't like that happen every single day that are outside. They're illegal, quite frankly, and we don't vote for. But it's clear to see the mechanism through which those things can stop. Think about that for a second. Now, that may seem crazy to some people, but I think there's a world in which we can envision in the future where we might not need to deal with some overarching, all-encompassing government shadowy figure that tells us how to live our lives for your benefit, of course. Of course, even talking about that, despite being in the Constitution, that we can alter or abolish it should it be against our interests, those things are labeled as terrorist stuff today. Also think about that and whether that shows you, or people believing too much in the Constitution being labeled domestic terrorists. Those are all real things. What does that show you about the group that are making those decisions? To me, that they're not in your interest and clearly don't even believe in the things that we think are foundational to this country. Thomas Massey also points out the government is shut down, but the House refuses to go back into session. Mike Johnson, why are we in recess? Because the day we go back into session, I have 218 votes for the discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. Right now, in my opinion, they are doing every single thing they can to make that 217. So it won't happen. Watch as one of those Republicans get pressured or threatened, in my opinion. And suddenly, by the time this comes back, he won't have the votes. I hope so. I support this entirely, but I think you know what I'm getting at. Now, let's talk about this opening story that I think is very important. First, a couple of things that I wanted you guys to see. Now, this is something I posted today. I was going to share this the other day in regard to free speech, but this is something Charlie Kirk put out back on March 4th before he passed. President Trump lays down the new rules on campus protests. No more federal funding for schools that allow illegal protests to continue. Well, none of those were illegal. They're illegal because they claim Palestinian support is terrorism. And now they've made that somewhat legal, even though it's unconstitutional. Foreign students sent home. He says American students expelled. Pretty simple. 100% not free speech. That is a unconstitutional suppression of speech. As the Supreme Court has ruled many times, Like we recently saw with the FCC point, if they go do something or else and then they make a decision, that's still suppression from the government. That's been roundly upheld in many different conversations. And it says, and no mask to hide identities of criminals. Oh, except unless they're ICE, I guess, and that's okay today. This, as I said, as much as it may upset some, is not what being a free speech absolutist looks like. I still, nonetheless, feel that Charlie was shifting his opinions around Israel, and as Candace would argue, around his faith, and shifting around his opinions and beliefs before he died. And it is very much my opinion that the most likely reality is that he was killed because of it. That's my opinion. But I think it's important to note that, though, right, is that he like I said, he stands up and says absolute free speech, and then Bondi comes out and says censorship because it's not free speech. And that's an insanely contradictory point, using his name for something he was very adamant about not supporting. But my point is, here's an example where he was not absolute, where he made a line because of politics, I argue. But if you ask him in any other conversation and you find those conversations out there, he draws no lines, except this is my point, is that when it comes to politics, people get swayed, they get manipulated, they get leaned on. Be independent in all things. Doesn't mean you can't believe and support, but to pretend, to put your lot in with some kind of larger group and then feel like you're bound to what they largely think is only going to drive you away from what from your principles, from what you believe in. So Stephen Miller, and I could show you, as you well know, hundreds of these posts from people in the government, mind you. He says the issue before us now, he meant to write, is very simple and clear. There is a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in the country. Now, even just that statement, I can very clearly prove to you that there's all sorts of weird intelligence and just radical groups, I guess, that exist in this country on both sides of the paradigm. It's not very secret. What I call that terrorism, not even close. What I call that a network, not even close. Unless we're talking about the intelligence apparatus, which is always there. And if you're pay attention, Antifa, Patriot Front, there's connections to all these things. I've proven this on the show. I never argue it's every single one of them because many of them just believe these things and they get used by the government, by the ADL. It's very public, guys. But my point here is that for him to say this and make the case that, have you proven this, Stephen Miller? There's some advisor to Homeland Security is now running the country, it seems, superseding Marco Rubio, because that's totally normal. The reality here is that this is something he's stating to create motion around something that no one has verified. The idea that there's and on top of that, most of them try to play it a little bit smart and make it seem like we only mean these ones. He comes out and says left terrorists, left wing, all terrorists, radical lunatics, because he has an interest, I think, in absolutely destroying this country. He's always the one that takes it a little bit too far. Very Zionist of him, because that's what he is publicly, admittedly. That shouldn't be something we're proud about today. And if you're new to the show and you somehow still think that means the homeland for the Jews, you've been buying the narrative that a lot of Jewish people today are beginning to scream have been lied about. Like I pointed out the other day, Seth Rogen, for example, comes out and goes, we've been lied our entire lives. A major mainstream person, or plenty of commentators. I don't trust any of them. The point is, it's obvious to see that momentum. People in politics, people in media suddenly going, okay, genocide, we can't deny it now. Yeah, very brave after a year and a half. The point, though, is that the whole world sees it. The reality is he's trying to drive this to destroy the country. And he goes, it is well organized and funded. Okay, no, that is even more important. That means evidence, doesn't it? What do you mean by that? Well organized, funded, prove it. You want to point to George Soros? I'm not going to deny that, but make your case, Stephen Miller. None of them have. It's a narrative game that they use to then roll out and do things and wherever they want, apparently. Maybe Illinois today, Portland, whatever, ICE, maybe, National Guard, we'll figure it out. No real structure except narrative and action, which ends up being the same old if you've been paying attention longer than 30 seconds. And it says, and it is shielded by far left Democrat judges. Okay, now you're accusing the judiciary of something. Can you prove that? If I were them, I would be going, that's libel. But he doesn't make it their names. That's probably why. But it says they only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and networks. So this is the war on terror. Come home, like we've been telling you for decades. That was always the plan, if you pay attention. And now he's simply telling you, look at that big bad thing we can't define. Use state power to rush through and deal with it, and we'll tell you how it settles. What do you think is going to happen when that goes on? Even if they're actually going after Democrats, if you think that's the problem. Yeah, the country will look quite a bit different when we're done. It's happening right in front of us right now. The point is that Stephen Miller is absolutely going left-wing terrorism. Now, when they go, he said fascist, he's driving in violence. Now, I'm never going to argue that him saying this means that he's responsible for other people doing fill in the blank. It does not matter. As much as this guy, this lazy-eyed sociopath who's absolutely trying to cause violence, in my opinion, I would still argue he's not legally responsible for what other people do. In what world did we ever make that case? Somebody else does something over there and now I'm somehow legally accountable? I don't care if I was going, go do that. You could make a case personally where you can go, I'm suing you because clearly you did this, or the person who runs the business can say, I watched that happen, I'm suing you, and the judge can decide. The government stepping in to argue you're guilty for somebody else's actions, we never should have made that case. Fire in a theater, I don't care. I mean, I'll even include this again since this is where we really get into that nuance. The recent conversation, oh, that's the wrong one. Oops, here's the Odyssey. Because the conversation, I mean, I think, and this is not something that I think this needs to be a conversation we have as individuals, as countries, as community, because the reality is that this is that's the free speech reality. That's it, period. Now, maybe people disagree. That's why I keep talking about it. Maybe this is why it can't be some hate you because you have a different opinion conversation. My point at the end of the day, as always, is that Stephen Miller, whether he's trying to or not, is not responsible for that. But I'm trying to highlight the fact that everything they're saying is being done aggressively on the right now. So Mike Young simply says, Stephen cries left-wing terror while ignoring the FBI's own stats. Yes, threats exist, but swinging state power like a sledgehammer at neighbors is paranoia, not patriotism. Real strength is protecting democracy for all. Now, whatever you think about that, the reality is that the stats, I also argue, are wildly manipulated. But he's not wrong. You can look, and it's what's so embarrassing. If they were so absolute about this, they wouldn't be deleting studies from the DOJ that showed you right wing was more of where the terror came from, or whatever they call that. Again, let's be clear. That is a lot of red hats. That is a lot of people holding certain signs. That's people being part of trucker convoys. We already talked about this back then. It's the attention span of a housefly this country has. We miss it because we're looking immediately to where they want us to look. Back then, the ADL made this huge sprawling case about how right-wing people were vanilla ISIS terrorists because they had certain ideas. It built up the numbers, and they made all these studies for it. And there's examples you can prove and you can't deny. Same with on the left. Now, the same thing's being done. Give it a couple years. I'm sure the ADL will have a whole bunch of new studies claiming left wing is the problem. The reality is it's based on lies, like Palestinian support. We can prove this. So it's really hard to tell for sure, but the point's the same. It's funny how they'll ignore their own information and scream the one thing without proving it to you. That seems pretty clear. Whatever side you think it's on, recognize dishonesty when it's staring you in the face. Recognize people using things they're creating to create an outcome. So here is what Mario shared, and trust me, we're going to go through this in depth with articles, follow-up information, an interesting post from Reddit, actual provable information downloaded directly from their YouTube before they deleted it, and a whole bunch of other stuff showing you, and all of his social medias, by the way, and some other interesting things. This is from Inside Edition, it looks like. Let's play the clip first. And this is basically breaking down the story for you. And this person framed it. Charlie Kirk's little cult just hit a new level of deranged. See, this is a person very much coming from the one side of the paradigm. But I don't disagree. This kid seems a little bit, you'll see. Let's play the clip first.
70 miles per hour. That's how fast cops say a 17-year-old was driving when he mowed down two teen girls riding on an e-bike. Now video has surfaced of the suspect shortly after the crash, laughing on a gaming site.
It's the creepy laugh of an accused killer. We're learning new information about 17-year-old Vincent Battaloro, accused of intentionally slamming his Jeep into two best friends as they rode an e-bike. According to just-released court papers, police say he was driving 70 miles an hour when he plowed into 17-year-olds Maria Niotis and Isabella Salas. We found this video of Battaloro on a gaming site talking about pranking Maria by sending a pizza to her house. She reportedly had spurned his advances and had filed for a restraining order against him.
Hi, can I place an order for delivery, please? Can I get 2 large pepperoni pizzas? It'll be cash at the door.
He then lets out that demonic laugh. He tells viewers it's all because allegedly Maria had made fun of Charlie Kirk.
Whenever Maria sees the pizza guy come, better think of Charlie Kirk for making fun of his death. Stupid clown.
A fellow gamer asks if he'll drive to Maria's house to watch.
For the podcast, that's a video of him saying that. So there's really no denying that that was said. The question is whether or not you feel that this was the intention, which that's for courts to decide.
The pizza be delivered.
Oh, I did that the last time, but the mother saw me pull up in the car, and I got tracked, and the police, did what they did.
Bataloro made the video 9 days ago. On Monday, when the two girls were killed, police say Bataloro fled the scene before they found and detained him and issued him an astonishing 15 tickets. But he was not arrested because he claimed it was an accident. The next day, Bataloro went online to express his condolences.
In a neighboring town, unfortunately, two girls were killed in a hit-and-run crash. I wish my sincerest condolences.
On Wednesday, after police discovered his connections to Maria Niotis, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Last night, Maria's mother spoke out.
She wasn't just my daughter. She was my best friend, my sunshine.
The families of both victims released a joint statement calling the suspect a coward of a man who had been plotting the attack for months.
Interesting. Well, what's first thoughts, and this is interesting to me that, apparently as I read in the article next, he was related to somebody higher up in the police department, but not immediately related, sort of like a cousin or something like that. But I do find it strange the way this went down, where he was ultimately let go despite the evidence that was clearly linked to him. Like he said, accident. But I mean, really? People are in the hospital about to die, if not already dead, and you're getting relief. That's hard to wrap my mind around. Now we'll get into this a little bit more. Oh, he also just points out that who knows if this is him making it up or not, but I get similar things. I think anybody doing this, and I think largely people who are being seen as a threat to all sides are, probably more likely, but people get it from the other, it shows you the engineered hatred coming from within the two-party division, as well as just people that are wanting to drive that, because this very well could be an Israeli bot for all we know, but it says, "You're a dead man walking" to the guy posting this. So this is from today. What we know about the 17-year-old Cranford, New Jersey hit-and-run suspect. It says a 17-year-old boy is facing first-degree murder charges in New Jersey after he allegedly struck and killed two teenage girls in a hit-and-run. Vincent Bataloro, isn't that what they just said? I thought that's what they said. Bataloro. Did they say Lorio? Maybe I'm misremembering. Bataloro is accused of intentionally driving an SUV into 17-year-old friends Maria Niotis and Isabella Salas before allegedly ditching the car and fleeing the scene. Bataloro was allegedly driving at least 70 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone when the fatal crash occurred Monday evening on Burnside Avenue in Cranford, according to the court records. Police said Bataloro abandoned the black 2021 Jeep Compass after striking Niotis and Salas and fled the scene. He was detained for questioning that evening, and apparently a bunch of tickets they claim in that report, given tickets, and released pending further investigation. Then arrested the next morning, police said. The victims, relatives, and friends claimed Bataloro was stalking one of the girls, and a restraining order had been filed against him before the crash. The Union County Prosecutor's Office, which is investigating the crash, did not immediately respond to CBS News, New York's request for verifying their claims. Now, you can see how easy it'd be to say, this guy's a Republican. This guy's going after people because they said things about Charlie. Well, the Charlie point is you can't dispute that. But do you know his motivation? Do you know if that was it because he was a Republican? But it's easy. This is the same thing we saw far too many very influential Republicans do in the moments after many things that turned out even to be the opposite, like a Robinson, like the Dallas shooting, like many examples where they screeched that we know it's left-wing terrorism before they even had a person in custody. So the point is, don't be like that. The same thing the left is doing now in this situation, or plenty of others. Don't fall in the trap. It's easy to want to make people like those idiots saying those things on both sides look stupid because they deserve to. But don't fall into the trap. Don't go for the low-hanging fruit. Be objective. Break it down for what it means. And so in this case, I think what's important to recognize is this person took this action, and so obviously you should be held accountable. And if we're going to argue that this was something more than that, then that needs to be proven. And I think it matters that we can point out that if it was Charlie Kirk and that argument that was what drove this, you could make a clear argument that he was worked up by people online saying, go after, like Laura Loomer, go after these people for saying things about Charlie. Now, would I say it's Laura's fault, or rather legal responsibility, that that person was killed? No, never. That's not how this works. Because how do you know that that's what Laura meant if she says go after them? Maybe she meant videotape them. The point is, it's irrelevant. But you should recognize that that does have an effect, just like you can say from the other side of people going, if somebody's going out and saying, take them out because they're fascist, well, yeah, that might drive someone to take irrational action. That would be their responsibility, though. On top of the fact, or aside from the fact that both sides are very obviously acting in fascist ways. But continuing. The victim's relatives and friends claimed Battaloro was stalking one of the girls. Later in a video streamed to his YouTube channel sometime after the crash, a young man speaks about the case and claims he was bullied. Quote, I've been bullied, ridiculed, and stuff over false allegations, okay? I think this was him trying to, before he was arrested, making it sound like, I think he was trying to build the idea that he wasn't guilty because thought he might have gotten away with it. Over the whole thing about things that have happened in the past, there's more to the story, it'll come out in the future. False allegations being the point, kind of floating that, or as we'll find out in a second, he went on and gave his condolences about what happened is a terrible thing, and not claiming that he did it before that all happened. I think that's clearly him thinking he's going to get away with it and trying to create the narrative that he was, just an accident and I'm sorry it happened and so on. So new details in the suspect hit and run. Family of Maria Neotis says they've been stalking him for months. It says the family said that he'd been stalking him for months, that they had reported on his behavior to local police with no response. I found that interesting. Because remember the family connection. And it says in a statement to Fox 5, the family said that this was the murder in the first degree and that he'd been plotting the attack for months. Carried out this horrific attack, taking not only her life, but also her friends. Quote, I want to be clear. This is the police, what was he? The police, just a police officer, I guess. He says, I want to be clear, as loud and as firm as possible, that in no way do my wife, children, or I condone, defend, or excuse the actions that cause this terrible and tragic loss of life. I don't know why it bothers me so much that anybody even has to say that. Like, I understand, like, he's trying to make it clear, like, I'm not involved. I'm not trying to help this guy, let justice take its course. But I just hate this weird political game. I condone the thing that's bad. First of all, if somebody doesn't care, or maybe they celebrate the bad thing, do you think they can't come out and be like, I condone it, and secretly celebrate it? We know that happens. So my point is, why do we feel compelled to come out and be like, I want to make it clear, I do not condone? Who the hell would publicly condone something like this? Who, in most cases, does, other than terrible people? But they exist. We know that. My point is that it's just so frustrating that you should broadly assume that somebody doesn't agree with murder. I'd like to believe that's most people in the world. Overall, I just think it's frustrating because it just feels fake now because it's always this thing. And if you don't stand up and go, I condemn the thing, they secretly go, oh, he must love it. It's politics, guys. It's just such a childish game. Anyway, his largest point in that, I think, is to come out and be like, look, we're not pulling strings for the guy. And it says, I do unequivocally condemn the actions of the accused. And like you, I demand that he face consequences. It's such unnecessary statements. But it says that the main point was continuing to say, full faith in the justice system. This will work out. Meanwhile, Vincent Battaloro himself took to social media the day after the crash, after they let him go. In a 20-minute live stream before his arrest, he talked about the crash without acknowledging his role in it. He claimed there's been a lot of misinformation, sharing about him being bullied. Now, here's where it got interesting. This is a random Our Destiny Reddit, subreddit. And it says, and the title is The Tate and Kirk Fan, which you can prove, I'll show you in a second, stalked and killed 2 teen girls. Why isn't the mainstream media or Democrats talking about this? I find that really fascinating as always, just like the other points you made. If we're to be told, like from a Jones, for example, that it's the Democrat deep state and they'll do everything they can at any moment to go after people like Trump and the right, the Republicans, there's so many examples where you can prove that's a flimsy false statement. In some cases, sure. And in most cases, there's never accountability. We'll actually get to a section on that today, despite the narrative. Get Nancy Pelosi. Yay, he's talking about her. Where's the action? Forever. Who cares? He said her name and we hate her. The point is that clearly there's examples where Democrats have a slam dunk. Usually I could point out foreign policy, for example. Look, he's a war criminal. He did this legal thing. And nobody says a word because they all either support it or know they're each guilty of the same thing. But in this case, why wouldn't you see this overwhelming push to be like, oh my God, look, a Republican killed that person? It may happen. Maybe they just haven't caught wind of it. But it makes me wonder if the larger agenda is to make this one way, and that all of them ultimately know that. It's worth thinking about. But it says, recently you may have seen this clip making the rounds where a 17-year-old kid expresses his sincerest condolences, and that we have the audio at the very least, to the family of the two girls. And it says, those who were unaware, as per the New York Post reporting, two 17-year-old girls, Maria Niotis, Isabella Salas, in New Jersey, were biking when they were rammed by a 2021 black Jeep by the aforementioned 17-year-old. Both of them died in a hospital. But Battaloro fled the scene and is now arrested and charged with 2 degrees of first-degree murder. And it says, his TikTok, which I have up here, is now unfortunately private, but his profile picture supports a 2021 black Jeep with Jersey plates. And it says his Twitter has been inactive since 2023, but contains multiple retweets of Andrew Tate. Now, here, this is the private now. Now, I guarantee this always happens by the platforms. This, Twitter, they delete it as fast as they can. Why does that happen these days? I think you can come to your conclusions. I have a very clear suspicion why. But here is his Twitter account, which is still up, at least it was when I started. And then here's an older one that they also had, but just an extra one, which is also his account that goes back even further. Not really much engagement, but you can prove more than one example of him, supporting, get the Tates out of jail, and supporting Tate, Kirk, same kind of thing. So as always, I could be just like the right is in subjective, like he's got a mask on, he must be the left, by saying it's most like, I would say he's a right Republican because of those things. Well, is it likely? I find it hard to believe a lefty would be supported, but who knows, guys? We shouldn't be childish like two-party illusionists. We should be questioning, be objective. It's likely with those things, but we don't know for sure. And it says on his Instagram, he follows J.D. Vance, Melania Trump, Donald J. Trump, Team Trump. Same thing. It's pretty far more likely. I think it's an obvious good guess that he's probably a Republican. But if we're going to be objective, we should not say we know that for a fact. But you can simply go look. All the evidence shows he's likely Republican. I wouldn't disagree with that statement. That's not what they do. They come out and go, we know he's Republican, right-wing terror. It's not what you should do. And even then, is it terrorism, or is this guy just an impressionable kid who got manipulated by, who knows, intelligence, propaganda? Maybe he's crazy, antidepressants, wartime propaganda. I mean, who knows today, guys? It's so many things can converge to make people do that. I think people snap, and I think that's part of the game that our government genuinely drives. Or we can get into neuro weapons and neuroscience. We were just talking about that with Catherine. It's not a joke, guys. All that aside, my point is we don't know. You can't prove it. So let's be adults about this and stop jumping into the partisan sides. It says the Kirk connection is ever more sinister. Going through his live streams, there's particularly disgusting string of events taking place. Now, they deleted all of it already, which is, again, always so frustrating to me. It's evidence. It's not like you can watch it and it says some horrible thing, that there's not personal identifiable information. It's just things that lead to more conclusions. Why would they delete that? Why would they ever delete that? Because it's controlling the flow of information around something. That's what I think. But I have the audio of them. I'll show you. But it says, hey, so basically what you heard, they were delivering pizzas to the person's house. That's the girls that died. And he says, hey, whenever Maria sees the pizza guy come, better think of Charlie Kirk for making fun of his effing death. Stupid ASS clown. Just remember that. And it says she made fun of Charlie's death on TikTok on a repost. Maybe her mother should monitor social media activity and many things like this. So can you prove that that's why? Who can prove what their personal intent was? It matters to know that these were the thoughts he had before this took place. Again, a fraction of this, people like Stephen Miller they're probably already calling this guy a left-wing terrorist or ignoring it entirely. If this was anything, if he followed one left-wing politician, Miller would be calling it left-wing terrorism, as we absolutely know for a fact. That's my point, guys, and that's insane. They're all driving things like this, in my opinion. Now, it says he held a consistent contempt for his female peers and justified harassing and said peers repeatedly because of a response he deemed unacceptable to Charlie's death. I don't think you can deny this. There's a whole bunch more in here. If you want to read through it, those are the points that stood out to me. This one was just simply, this is the one. This is the audio of, and it does, technically it's not just audio. It is, so basically he did streaming around baseball reports, as well as him playing this game. You can see his face on the top as he's basically playing the game and says these things on the
Charlie Kirk once I would lay down.
And there's cussing. Earmuffs for the children out there that are paying attention.
I got to get drop P5 tonight.
Hey, whenever Maria sees the pizza guy come, better think of Charlie Kirk for making fun of his fucking death. Stupid ass clown.
Wait, what?
Just remember that.
What happened?
Now
What'd
the
you just
restaurant's calling the number. I'm not answering it. That's worth a walk. Yeah, I'm not answering that phone.
What were you saying that she... What about Charlie Kirk?
No, she made fun of Charlie Kirk's death on TikTok on a repost.
Oh, she did?
Maybe her mother should monitor her social media activity. So that's going to be a double play.
Maybe they should just...
I'm just going to, you know what? I'm putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. Good luck trying to call my phone.
Remember, guys, this is the girl he later killed.
My burner phone. My burner phone.
Or to be objective is what the reports are showing. But based on what we can see, based on the already engaged, it does appear to be the most likely reality. Like, you know, but again, it's not wrong to question everything, especially since we've been lied to damn near consistently from every story we've ever gotten from our, you know, especially more recently. But unless there's other reasons to look in a different direction, that does right now appear to be the most obvious case.
Not my normal phone, my burner phone. Good luck.
So this is from looks like just somebody's random post on this mirror site, and that was what was linked to on the Reddit post, and all these videos have now been removed by YouTube. And this was the other one, if you want to listen to it, where it's basically him just going, you know, giving condolences after he killed them, and like, laughing about things like they played on that. It's a little bit, it's pretty weird. Oh, and here's the video on the archive. Unfortunately, I've had luck in the past being able to like download in some way from the archive, but usually it doesn't work. But this is the one. It's saved on there. You can see the YouTube account right there. And again, the TikTok that's been censored or rather just privatized, and now you can skim through these if you want. You'll find there's not many statements. It seems to be not much engagement, but you can find retweets and posts and stuff about both Tate and Kirk. Now, I didn't go too deep on the older one, but maybe go through there and you can find for yourself if there's anything that makes anything more relevant. Oh, and again, here's a post he had about helping Andrew Tate. Now, before we go into anything else, it's just it's a very sad story. I mean, this kid is troubled, obviously, and you know, first and foremost, like if we weren't drowning in partisan chaos, like deliberate partisan, like dementia mania, it seems, then we would be able to every time be objective and be like, okay, this happened. You know, first and foremost, maybe the guy was just troubled. Maybe whether or not he's a left or right, maybe he just has trouble. Maybe it's, you know, let's think of it like this. And it's not clear that let's be specific. Less than half of the country involves itself in left-right politics. Really remember that, guys. Every time it's 44 something percent. The majority of this country that does participate registers as independent. And then the largest block are people that don't even participate. So don't forget how clearly that shows you that they're not controlling what they think. But for the conversation of the politics, they're claiming it's a 50-50 shot, guys, that somebody will be left or right. So the idea that you can just take every bad thing that happens and go, oh, he's a lefty, that's why it all adds up. It's just lazy, manipulative propaganda. It is social engineering. Of course, it could be something that's relevant, but to just pretend we know that is, I mean, every one of them, from Matt Walsh, I mean, people across the board with the largest influence are out there screaming, lefty terrorist, lefty terrorist. And of course, we've gone over, I mean, long before this has even been the topic, go back 10 years, we're talking about very real things that connect to that very point, but never claiming it's because of their ideology or because the problem is that people who are just simply left and right, who have different political standings, are regular people. And you can see the same kind of, you know, even as, what's his name? Now I'm going to blank on his name. I forget his name now. Prominent person during COVID-19 time, you know, suspect, God, forget his name, but came out early in the last election and said the same thing. He said, look, I can see both sides like flaming their most radical parts, very clearly leaning into and stoking and working the most extreme parts of their base, but then outwardly making it act like they're not them. But and we all see that. And so those are the two sides that they're literally built. I think we're watching some kind of engineered division, Civil War level thing. And I'm not claiming that's where it will end up. My point is that you can see that. And you know my opinion. I think Israel's playing a large role in that, largely because they literally say that, by the way, but I'm crazy. The reality, though, is regardless of why, it is happening. And so when we come back to an individual like this, the first thing is maybe he's just a struggling kid, too many medications, maybe he's got a mental problem. And of course, if we can prove some kind of intent, then we can take into that conversation. Now, saying something about Charlie Kirk, or if he ends up admitting that was why, that really should matter. And it should matter in any context, but let's be objective and not fall into this trap. But realize that these kind of things, the both sides, left and right, really just your government, are fanning these two things to watch this thing bang against each other. Why? So we don't pay attention to what they're doing to all of us simultaneously. That's what I think. I mean, it's quite obvious what's happening. Every single tool we'll get into in a second that they roll out, it's being applied to equally Americans. Anybody who's an issue for the power structure, and they're rolling it out around us in a rapid way that's in one of the most unconstitutional. I mean, it's not harsh to say it's not over hyperbolic, rather, to say a constitutional crisis. We are living through an absolute collapse of constitutional reality in this country. And it's terrifying because of how much that seems to be like the only last tendril thread keeping the illusion of some kind of accountability on the government that I don't even think is even there right now. But they care because we do. So think about that. Here's another part to this I thought was interesting. Different part, different story, nonetheless interesting. It says these two were pretending to be Antifa and were trying to bull bait protesters by videotaping them and sneaking around, so they were called out, and guess who they were? MAGA's finest, Joey Gibson and Patriot Prayer Group, and his girlfriend. And if you don't know who they are, you can look it up, and it shows their faces. I'll play the clip. That's this guy, I guess. I wasn't familiar with him until I saw this. Joseph Owen Gibson, the Wikipedia calls him a right-wing activist and founder of Patriot Prayer, which is active in Portland, Oregon, and other cities. Now, who knows what their intent is, unless they, get into it in a longer video. The reality for me is that you could argue they were there to try to prove that they really are the lefty. However you think, at the end of the day, what you're seeing is them dressing up and pretending to be Antifa for whatever end. So is it not the logical thing to ask whether or not maybe some of these things were set up by things like this? In no way should that be to say that Antifa hasn't done plenty of obvious violence, guys. It's not even questionable. Or on top of that there's plenty of just people existing in these conversations. They just get labeled Antifa despite there ever being a provable connection to some organized group. Regardless, I think it's pretty obvious to see that there's some kind of thing that happens like that, just like with Patriot Front, and many others. But just like we always point out, or how about this? In the same kind of thing in reverse that we pointed out many times. On January 6th, you have example of people there who were, again, it became Antifa, but at the time, there's no provable point. It's just a guy. In fact, I don't even think it was the Antifa group. It was some left-wing group, but to make it simple, people call it Antifa. This guy at the top, I forget his name now. It's in the source material, was dressed with a Trump hat, dressed like the rest of them, but ended up being proven to be a left-wing activist who was on video going, "We did it. We tricked them. We got them to go in the Capitol." And that never even gets brought up, not even by Republicans, it seems. Isn't that crazy? Or again, let's not forget the Azov movement guy, Sergei Beninin, that was there screaming, "Let's go," in Russian, as they were trying to make it seem like Russia was involved. They really tried to lay that down. This was a psychological operation, guys. It's not even secret. Bottom line, though, is that that's what we're talking about. And so you need to ask, and don't be blinded by your personal side, whether or not these people were out there to create violence to blame on Antifa. Even if you think that's them doing what they believe is right to get them because Antifa is doing it in ways they don't get caught for. So we're going to do a small version so they have a reason to go after them because we know they're terrorists. You see, that's the kind of broken logic partisanship creates. Here's the video.
Well, how? She started shit. I was minding my own fucking business. I was minding my own fucking business, and then you.
And I don't know who she is, but she was recording people's faces.
Man, who are you, man?
Yeah, you just called out by one of
Who are you by chance?
I've been trolling the shit out of him for years. Want it? Okay, great. Thank you.
Who are
You made it really easy.
Hey, man.
You can see both their faces. Now, who knows what the intent is, right? I mean, apparently there was a whole thing that I'm still, this was it's hard when these things are happening. It's very difficult to get the truth from like a Andy No, for example. People have very clear partisan perspectives on this stuff, but whether or not this was something that was planned or it was an organized thing or there was more chaos they were responsible for, the end of the day, this is important because you have to consider this possibility. Don't then always assume that's the case, like somebody might want to make their other side. Just be objective. It's not that difficult. Consider that this may be something, this is why when events happen, when you get all the politicians that rush out and go left-wing violence without even knowing what's happened yet, don't be a child. Don't follow along. You're going to get the Benny Johnsons, Nick Sorders, and all of them are going to scream whatever they say. I mean, does anybody question that? It's obvious, with the inclusion of a red siren and a braking sign, even though it came out 30 minutes ago. It will always happen. But everybody else who are out there and you see this and you see something happen, wait for evidence to make any kind of allegation. Look and see whether or not maybe it is somebody pretending to be the other side, or maybe they're not part of anything and they just wore black because they don't want to be, or maybe it's the FBI. It's constant. So let me include this for you real quick. We're going to end up going to some Israel overlap. Now, last on this, Elon Musk, rather Eric Dougherty, one of the, same kind of, these are the people that are just kind of like mass sharing whatever the team is saying. He says, we need, first of all, Bukele, the authoritarian leader in El Salvador, says, if you don't impeach the corrupt judges, you cannot fix the country. They will form a cartel, a judicial dictatorship, and block all reforms protecting the systemic corruption that put them in their seats, says the open dictator who literally illegally took power. Eric says, we need to Bukele our court system. Watch how quickly this country is fixed. Elon Musk says, essential. I'm just blown away by how stupid these people are, or I think largely they don't even care. It's a team sport politics thing. It doesn't even matter. And I honestly think someone like Eric is I shouldn't say that. I don't know him personally. I've never even seen him speak publicly, which I think gives me some kind of insight into somebody's intelligence. Either way, the fact he's doing this kind of work makes me think poorly of him. But in general sense, my argument would be these people, like a Nick Sorter. I don't think these people are smart enough to recognize what they're actually a part of. I think they're quite literally destroying this country, creating circumstances to allow the most authoritarian dictatorial control over our country we've ever seen. But high-five him because #winning, because we think it's just insane. But some of them do. That's even more alarming. But this guy, Tommy, I'm not familiar with, says Bukele forced out independent judges, 100% proven, packed the courts with loyalists, 100. Every one of these things is verifiable to a T. I've shown you this on my show. The argument is the same. Well, they were the other team. They were the bad guys. They were the deep state. Who cares? So this is the thing. If they're deep state, then why would we care? Why would we be legal to go after them? Just remove them. Who cares about the law? They're the deep state. Are they? Can you prove that? That should matter, shouldn't it? And it says, then declared a state of emergency that allowed him to arrest and indefinitely detain people without any due process. He has suspended civil liberties and never brought it back. That's what you want? It says, when we say these guys are advocating for fascist ideas, it's because they literally are. See, I agree with that. But see, if you think this only applies to the right, then I think you're doing the same blindness when it comes to the people on the left. You just have to look at it from a different way. It's the outcome, the end result. Or, maybe a socialist communist kind of bent versus a fascist bent, which ultimately is the same general conversation. And you see both things happening in this country right now, just like you saw both things happening under Biden. This is not some manipulative fence sitting. This is the obvious, verifiable reality. It's clear. Of course, there is no such fence when you realize it's just the government doing it to you. My point, though, is that we can obviously see that this is fascistic, what they're pointing to. And maybe Eric or the rest don't even know that. But the point or the reality of the bigger picture is that all of this is happening on both sides. And so calling one or the other fascist is not inaccurate. And even if it was, it's still not incitement to violence. Sometimes I say things in the show and I'm going like, I can't believe we're here where I even have to explain. It's like doing a demonstration on how to tie your shoes. That's how it feels sometimes. And you go, why do I need to go through this? But it's because we're being dumbed down and creased. And in no way am I saying, look, my honest opinion, we have a very intelligent community in this. And I think that's just because we hold a higher standard for ourselves. But my point is, in a general sense, because of the dumbing down of this country, that we fall into the partisan pettiness. Even I do sometimes, guys. It's just how this is, it's being driven. But think about that, guys. Think about where we are and how both sides are like battering ram against each other. How does either side see that as a positive outcome for themselves? I mean, really think about that from a, Lindsey Graham to a Nancy Pelosi. I mean, do they really look at this going, that'll help us? That'll save the country. Even if they are actually the deep state, what do you think what you're doing will it's going to cause the absolute destruction of the Constitution. It'll cause the collapse of this country in many ways. Even if you don't think that's the case, point out why you think this is benefiting anybody. Anyway, I just hope we're smart enough to think beyond this. Now, some points about Israel I didn't want you to miss, and let's get to the technocratic side of the same conversation. But first, Ben-Gvir, as Ryan Rosbiani is pointing out, wants to hold the global Sumud flotilla, the crew, in prison for months. Now, whether it happens or not, we'll have to see. The fact that they're still there, it blows my mind. Apparently, there's 12 Americans that are there. Some of them are vets. But Trump doesn't, have they even brought it up? Do they even care? No. Not Trump, not Marco Rubio, not Bondi, not Hegseth, not Cash, not Dan, not any of them. All these America First patriots, and they don't even care that 12 Americans are in a foreign prison for not breaking the law. In fact, for trying to bring food to starving people that you claim you want to feed. I mean, they're lying to you guys. You all see that by now. And here's Ben-Gvir, the guy who was making fun of them, pointing at him, going, terrorist, terrorist, to all of them. He wants to hold them for months. I mean, it's mind-blowing how obvious this is. Michael Gallant points out, my dear friend, David Adler, was kidnapped and imprisoned by Israel for daring to bring aid to Gaza. The flotilla prisoners report horrific abuse. The U.S. has failed its own citizens, which happens every time this happens. Literally every time this happens. Going back, I've showed you Joe Meter how many times? In fact, I show it so often, I bet you I can get it to pop up right now. Just look at the first one. I typed J and it came up. The point is clearly this has been, you go back left, right administration, your government completely ignores you if Israel takes you prisoner. How do you possibly not see what that shows you? Joe Meters is a veteran from the USS Liberty. And you listen to him, he'll tell you, not on this video, he'll happily tell you that he knows, because it obviously happened and you can prove it, that the U.S. government allowed, or rather covered up, that Israel attacked U.S. ships. But so he got arrested on a flotilla and was held in prison in Israel for months, and nobody cared. No one said a word outside of people like us. Again, nobody meaning people in power with the ability to do something about it. So David Adler, is now in prison. David wouldn't want us to make this about him. But as he acted for Gaza, we must act to bring him home. Think of the courage it takes, guys. They knew this was going to happen. You have to understand that. They knew that this was going to happen. They got bombed. They got skunk water and chemical weapons sprayed on them. And that's what we're talking about. It's like a chemical biological overlap. You look into what this, just quickly look up skunk water in regard to Israel. It'll terrify you. The people have died. People go into comas. I mean, the stuff they do, or the gas they use, same thing. It's not regular gas. Either way, they knew this was going to happen, and they put their lives at risk anyway for people who are starving to death. As Al-Quds reports, Israel has committed flagrant violations of international law against the detainees of the Freedom Flotilla, including deprivation of necessary medical treatment, life-saving medications, as well as potable water and food, and held some trial sessions without legal representation and without listening to the detainees' testimonies or documenting the violations, and imposed severe restrictions on their right to access their lawyers. They were subjected to handcuffing for long hours, and the jailers forced them to sit or kneel on the ground and under the sun. For some of them were subjected to kicking, beating, and verbal insults. Now, we've heard quite a bit more, actually, but I can't verify it from reports of forcing them to kiss the Israeli flag. I mean, is anybody even balking? I can't prove it, but would that even surprise you? I mean, also, let's remember, he called you, said, you're all terrorists. Okay. What does Ben-Gvir say should be done with terrorists? So we're going to quibble about the fact that they would treat them this way? I mean, it's verifiable. This is what they do. And it's happened in the past with these exact situations. I'll include this, the actual page for the website for Freedom Flotilla Coalition. Here are the reports as of October 1st about what happened, but it's up in the air. As I understand it, Greta has been taken home. Now, you can let that mean what you want it to mean. I don't think that necessarily proves there's some kind of weirder thing there, but I'm sure people will question that, and you should. But I think what's obvious is that they let the higher profile people go, because At the core, Zionists are cowards. And you can see that this is ultimately about abusing who they can without any pushback because they know they can get away with it, abusing a bunch of people who are unarmed because they know they won't get hurt, and they're doing it to make a point. And all it makes them look like is weak cowards. And at the end of the day, they let go of the people who are on the higher profile because they knew that that would give them more pushback, because Greta can probably wield a lot of resources. I think that's absolutely what's going on. How in the world can these Americans or anybody else, again, I'm speaking from the American perspective to my government, but anywhere else, where are their governments? Why aren't they doing something about this? Now, speaking of Israel, let's make sure we give you the update on what's happening with this supposed ceasefire. Now, where we left off last time is it was proposed and Trump was screaming, everything will come crashing down if you don't do what you're told. Oh, that was on the 3rd. Hamas says it agrees to release Israeli hostages, but seeks changes. So this is interesting to me. Also sort of showing that the bluster, the false bluster, I guess that kind of means false in its own right. Hamas has agreed to release all the remaining Israeli hostages, but says it wants further negotiations on a number of key points outlined in the U.S. peace plan. The announcement came hours after Trump gave Hamas a Sunday deadline, that's today, to accept the peace plan or face all hell. You know, the idea that you can literally make a deal claiming that that Hamas not existing is the reason, is the only thing we want out of this, and then claiming that you have to accept a deal that says you need to be killed before we can end this. That's essentially what's happening, but not working with them, though. Working with the PA, working with and Israel and the United States, and then coming to a conclusion and going, we reached a deal. Hamas, do what you say, yes or no. That's what they're doing. And even then, they still engage with the process. But first of all, he said, accept what we just did or all hell, right? After Hamas submitted its response, Trump posted on Truth Social, I believe they're ready for lasting peace. Oh, so you were bluffing then. I get it. He says he called on Israel to immediately stop bombing of Gaza, which they immediately didn't do and keep bombing right now, right up until the moment we started. So all this shows you is that Trump is willing to look ineffectual, to look completely inept when it comes to Israel. Like sitting there and slouching in a chair, holding the phone for Netanyahu. In what other circumstances Trump ever allow that kind of reality? His hubris takes over everything, his narcissism, but I guess not when it comes to Israel. So in this case, he says, you better take this deal or all hell. And they go, no, we have some changes. And he goes, good, peace. Okay, well, then that was the same old bluster he does every time. You know how many times he said that statement? I said that last time. You better do this or everything. And then, nothing. And then nothing happens. So why does anybody take him seriously? And I'm not even saying that means he wouldn't act. We know they would. But I just think it shows you that it's nonstop bluster and politics. Like it always is, but it's bad. It's clumsy right now. I think it has been for a while. And next it says he called again on the immediate stopping of bombing in Gaza, which from the moment he said that until right now, they've not only stopped, it seems they've increased. Does he say anything? No, he'll probably just pretend like they listened to him. Because admitting that they didn't even falter, ignored what you said, shows you, one, that you're not in control of the situation, that you're not the one leading the conversation, and that they don't care what you say. He'll never admit that publicly. He says, we're already in discussion, the details to be worked out. No, that's actually not true, because right now it seems Israel's flying to Egypt to make discussions about this new, I can promise you my opinion, but I know where this is going to go. It's the same way it's gone every other time. We have every single precedent before this that makes it clear that Israel will blow this up before they get what they want. However, it says the Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu announced the plan together on Monday. Last Monday, Netanyahu reinstated his longstanding opposition to a Palestinian state. Okay, saying in a video statement shortly after the announcement. So Trump goes, we made a deal. It's for a Palestinian state. It's for the continuing. Okay, and he goes on to say, it's not written in the agreement, Netanyahu says. We said we would strongly oppose a Palestinian state. Okay, let me get this straight. So you are making a deal for the future of Gaza, and it doesn't include the Palestinians. That's correct. Pretty simple. He's literally saying, we will not allow a Palestinian state. And they're also saying we need to get rid of all the Palestinians. We need to move them all out of here. And then Trump stands up and goes, we have a future peace plan for the Palestinians. And that deal, by the way, is hinging on Hamas being destroyed. Now, Hamas, you must accept this. I mean, this is a cartoon we're watching right now, guys. And anybody who's not ridiculously involved can see it and is calling it out. That's most of the world right now. Earlier on Friday, Trump posted on his Truth Social platform, if this last chance agreement is not reached, all hell, like no one has ever seen before, will break out against Hamas. You mean despite the carpet bombing destruction of every single thing in there? Yeah, I guess more than that he means. There will be peace in the Middle East, one way or the other. Isn't that insane? You know what that reminds me of? The show Peacemaker on HBO, where his tagline is, what is it? He's like, I fight for peace no matter how many men, women, and children I have to kill to get it. Something like that. That's a joke. It's on HBO. Is that not exactly what this is? There'll be peace one way or another. Okay. So murder your way to peace? Yeah, that's basically what they're doing. In a briefing on the White House on Friday afternoon, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the consequences of turning down the deal would be very grave. Okay. And then they go, no, I've got changes. And they went, yay. Okay, so then there were no consequences. You were making that up and really aren't in control of the situation. I need people to recognize how obvious that is. In the 24 hours before midday on Friday, 63 people were killed. So Trump says on what day was it again? Monday or Tuesday? Oh, he posted on Friday. They came out then on the end of the week. He said, you better accept it, all hell. Okay. And then, or actually even before that, actually, the him saying he called Israel so it says, I'm trying to get the date here, the day on Sunday. Okay, so Sunday last week. And then Trump said, I believe they're ready for peace. Then he called on Israel to stop bombing immediately, to work out the deal. Okay. They continue to bomb every single day since then. Here's Sunday today, saying, where was it? I just, right there. 63 people on Friday. 63 were killed, Israeli military operations, according to people on the ground. This keeps happening every day. Today, so far, 55, as far as I can tell. Hundreds of thousands of Gaza City residents have been forced to flee after Israeli military ordered evacuations to a designated humanitarian area, which doesn't exist. But hundreds of thousands more are believed to be remained. So even BBC is putting it in quotes, guys. Everyone's calling this out. And the truth is didn't Trump just tell him to not do that? Yeah, he didn't care. Israel defense minister has warned that those who stay during the offensive would be terrorists. Hey, too bad. Okay, what if they're in a wheelchair and they can't get there in time? Too bad, you're a terrorist. What happens if they're in the bed and nobody can move them? You're a terrorist now. That's just how it works. See, the reality is they're all terrorists in the minds of these Israeli sociopaths. And all they're doing is ping-ponging them back and forth between areas and bombing them on the way. Every day we see those reports. Or come get some food and we'll snipe you along the way and tell you it's all freedom. Israel has said the offensive aims to secure the release of remaining hostages. Again, call their bluff because they've turned that down every single time. 9th and 10th of October, 2023. They had 2 full offers to begin. They turned it down and said, no, we're going after Hamas. Hostages are secondary. James Elder from the UN said, quote, on Friday, the idea of a safe zone was farcical. That's his word. Bombs are dropped from the sky with chilling predictability. Schools, which have been designated as temporary shelters, even within the Israeli conversation, right? These are places that have been bombed, removed. There's no tunnel. There ever really was. And not saying there aren't any. My point is that they keep saying that. Then they designate this as a UN safe zone, tell Israel, which they never should really do, this is not, okay, then they bomb that place. And then when it gets covered in the corporate media, they go, oh, terrorists, Hamas. And nobody cares. Designated as temporary shelters, and they're regularly reduced to rubble. Okay, sounds nothing contradictory there. Well, again, even the Guardian. Trump orders Israel to immediately stop bombing, and they didn't. Okay, here is the 4th. That was in the 3rd. Trump says Israel agrees to initial withdrawal line. Hamas confirmation pending. Okay, so now, first of all, it's that the next day, Israel agrees to a withdrawal line. So you just told us 2 days ago that Israel's agreed to the deal, right? Then you said Hamas needs to accept. Now Israel agrees to a different point. Like, the point is, this is always flux. It's always in flux. And that's the way they play this. And it says Israel strikes kill dozens on Saturday ahead of talks. Right. So they're going to have conversations about this and they bomb everybody because that's what happens when you're trying to engage with a peace agreement, right? In no world will that ever take. This is Trump going, do it or else. That's not going to work. I think that's obvious, and I think that's probably why they do it. They don't want this to work. Drop site news today. In the past 24 hours, Gaza health ministers reported an additional 65 killed, 153 injured, arriving at hospitals. At least 2 aid seekers were killed and 30 were injured. This brings the recorded death toll from the Israeli genocide in Gaza to 67,139 that we can prove, and over 169,000 injuries. This baby girl, you can see there, only a few months old, was injured when Israel bombed their home in Al-Tufa neighborhood, east of Gaza City. This is just a site that I saw in search that kind of is up to date, giving you kind of the up to date actions taking place, citing the different locations that, reported and so on. And really just want to show you that you can go back, all day today, bombing all day, go back to the days before and recognize that they've never even briefly stopped bombing. They've continued to pretend to negotiate, and they bombed and they bombed and they bombed the entire time. All this is included if you want to scroll through and look at all the different reports hour to hour. One person dies in Gaza due to starvation every day, constantly. Funny, and is that still the famine that you all told us was fake? Gaza war not over yet, Marco Rubio says. Oh, good. Thanks for letting us know that you're not done murdering everybody in Gaza. Ryan Rosbiani points out Trump slams Netanyahu over the Gaza ceasefire, and the theater begins anew. If you think for 1 second that this is actually some kind of division, guys, they've been lockstep from the very beginning. They already had, like Jones tried, they split like I knew was going to happen, and then they were tighter than ever after that. The reality is they play us with these kind of things every single time. Now, could I be wrong? Of course, I can always be wrong. It's always possible. I don't think that's the case here. I think we should wait to see how it pans out and don't blindly take what they tell you. Watch for the actions. If he was splitting with Netanyahu, he wouldn't still be supporting a genocide. That's probably the most problematic thing in this entire situation. It says, according to U.S. officials, Trump fired back. I don't know why you're always so effing negative. This is a win. Take it. Now, do I also think simultaneously, it's two different points. Whether Trump will break is not the same as saying whether Trump likes Netanyahu. I think it's very clear, as even the Charlie Kirk story revealed through Gray Zone and others, that Trump is, he feels, I think he's, what's the word they used? He's threatened. Ultimately, he is worried about what Netanyahu will do. And that's the same thing Kirk picked up on, the same thing Kirk was saying. So that's interesting. And overall, that statement I think is accurate, that he's angry and frustrated, but then outwardly he's like, we're the best and Israel's our ally, just like the left. The clash shows Trump's growing impatience with Netanyahu, he writes, resistance and his determination to end the war on his terms. Well, you could read it that way if you want. I don't agree. Most likely motivated by his desire to win the Nobel Peace Prize. This is your chance at victory. So Hamas said it's ready to release all hostages. Trump saw this as a major opening. Netanyahu insisted it was a rejection. See? Trump told Bibi this was his chance for victory. Within 3 hours of their call, Trump urged Israel to halt airstrikes, negotiations, including Kushner, to meet this week. And guess what they didn't do? They did not stop bombing in Gaza. So Trump very clearly wants to be done with this because it's destroying everything. Not to say that if he wasn't doing this, he'd be fighting for you. I don't believe that. Either way, this is a problematic thing, just like Epstein. It's all the same conversation. At the end of the day, I think this is him behind the scenes going, get it done. Take this and let's be done with this. And that was never in the cards. Probably because Netanyahu's feeding him a line of BS like everybody else. Because Netanyahu loves to brag about how easy it is to control the two-party paradigm in this country. We'll have to wait and see. One last point on the infiltration. I think this is interesting to see. Israel Exposed points this out. Watch this congressman. His name is Jake, how do you say it? Anchenclose. Watch him realize, it's hard that you can't prove what he's thinking, but I get the sense of their point is look at his face. Look at his face when their voters say to him that he's being influenced by Israel because of his money from AIPAC. Found this interesting.
What are you doing about the starving children in Gaza?
And the point is to think about is that this is what I'm always trying to show you guys. This is changing. These are the average people, and most of them probably don't have large influence on Twitter or anywhere else. So you don't hear them. You hear the fake two-party illusionist drown out everybody else and pretend that they're the majority. They need that because their entire shtick is built on keeping you thinking that they're mainstream alternative media and the mainstream media, and they're fighting each other left and right. When I think the vast majority, like an iceberg, is so far away from that now that it's getting cartoonish. So these are average people standing up and going, this guy takes tons of money, as it just showed, from Israel. And yet he's out there supporting or being, he's in a place where most of his voters seem to want that to stop. And it doesn't. I think that speaks for itself.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Taking money from AIPAC with respect. That's something that is infiltrated our government.
AIPAC money.
Watch Congressman Jake Auchincloss discover in real time that his voters know he's bought and paid for by the Israeli lobby.
I wondered whether if you had not accepted AIPAC money, whether you'd change your feeling about speaking about Israel-Palestine.
I think we as citizens and as policymakers have to hold in our heads competing convictions and ideas.
Me personally, I'm concerned with AIPAC, and I was just wondering if you particularly or anyone you know of has any plans to try to reduce this problem.
What are you doing to prevent the use of our taxes to starve and kill people in Gaza?
Yeah.
You were elected by us. Remember that.
I've addressed Israel and Gaza now on, I think, 3 separate occasions, so we're going to keep moving on.
So I know you...
Listen to that. Those are his constituents. That was the whole room. Look at him. This is a person acting against the interest of American people or his constituents because of the people paying him. Welcome to American politics. And think about what he said to begin with. Conflicting conviction? No. That's hypocrisy. I understand that there can be conflicting ideas that you need to flesh out to maybe find your path. But the argument that just in general, you've got, that's like saying I've got conflicting principles. That means you don't have them. You are splitting between 2 different ideas that seem contradictory because you're a hypocrite being paid to be so. That's my opinion. You could decide for yourself.
Don't really want to take any more questions about Gaza, but I'm going to ask you to think about it.
Starvation is not what my tax dollars should go to.
So I hear the sense of emotional urgency behind Gaza. I've addressed that issue. I'm not going to continue to address the issue.
I want to know, aside from taking money from AIPAC, with respect, that's something that is infiltrated our government.
What are you going to do?
What do you plan to do to end the killing of Palestinians in Gaza?
I mean, guys, these are average people. I mean, I really want to stress again to think about the iceberg analogy and recognize that this country has this toothpaste out of the bottle. This is there's no pulling this back. People are aware that the Israeli government is influencing policy in this country to the degree that it may very well be in charge. You can decide that last part, but to debate whether or not Israel is influencing policy is insane to me. We're at a point where they're going, yeah, basically yes, but it's because they're allies and we're on the same thing. Like they're getting to the point where they're borderline admitting that's the reality. That's why everyone has an issue with this. Your politicians don't seem to represent you anymore. Now, there seem to be a few that are striking the right path. Support them, whether or not they genuinely mean it. Hold them accountable no matter what. Continue to question them no matter what, especially since they may just be saying that to get your attention, but support it anyway. Give these politicians the incentive to go in the right direction. Show them they're opportunist politicians that they are. And maybe in a world eventually we don't need them, but show them now, since it exists, that it will benefit them more than anything else to tell the truth. Because that's what we want.
Gaza, while they are trying to access food.
I've addressed the Gaza issue on numerous times.
So you don't plan to do anything to end the killing of Palestinians?
Do you believe killing children and civilians in the name of strategic defense is ever justified? Yes or no?
A somewhat related question. I want to make clear I'm a lifetime Democrat, and I will probably continue to be. But I also feel that all 3 branches of our government are betraying the people of the United States right now.
Look at that. So you see now suddenly why people like Stephen Miller are so hell-bent on making it a division reality, just like they wanted to split down the division of your media consumption, TikTok and everything else, because people were seeing it, and they still are, left or right. See, you have more in common than you want to see if you're lost in the partisan game. The lifelong Democrat, I see that problem. Lifelong Republican, I see that problem. And I think that's the majority of people in, not the influencer types. How do you not recognize what that shows you? Even if you vehemently disagree with basic, like wedge issues and things that matter to you, recognize the core urgency of that point. And recognize that we're on the same side of that point. And the only ones not on that side are the ones that are being paid not to and who are on the other side. That's my opinion. Now, here's what Glenn Greenwald said. We showed this before. There were 2 venues in the U.S. where Israel criticisms thrived, U.S. campuses and TikTok. The campus problem was solved by Trump's new hate speech codes. Remember, I showed you Kirk cheering that on. Firing professors, DEI for Jewish students, right? The same thing they were firing, no DEI, except this one. Same thing. I keep making that point. The isolated version after the broader case. The TikTok problem was solved by giving it to the IDF financier, Larry Ellison. Gen X Girl says they're solving the rest by buying influencers and saturation discourse. She's right. We already talked about this. FAR registration shows the Israel paid $900,000 for U.S. influencers between July and December 2025. I mean, you could look through them. And the reality is there's a hell of a lot more that's on this list. These are the ones that got shown. You know the ones we're talking about. All the same ones that we're seeing out there that pull these punches everywhere they can for this conversation. Responsible statecraft. Israel's paying influencers $7,000 per post. You don't think people take that bait? I mean, people who don't even care about politics are going to jump on this to make money and then be propagandizing one side of the argument. Here's Matt Wallace, who we've called out forever as probably one of the most cartoonishly stupid people in this platform. He has me blocked. That's why this is on here. Benjamin Netanyahu, he writes 11 hours ago, is the best leader in history, and every single human on earth loves him. Yeah, perfect that Matt Wallace, excuse me. In case I said Walsh, it's Matt Wallace I'm talking about. Of course he comes out and says, because this guy's a cartoon. He's the one. I mean, that's not even worth getting into. If you want to think of the most the most hyperbole, like imagine Babylon Bee making fun of what some of the worst reporters are doing. That's exactly what he does. It's insane. It's just the most clickbait. Pay the link and then just rattling off things that people said with no evidence. It's crazy, and it's usually tied back to things that are not even true. Overall, for him to do this is just like perfect. Exactly. They're the low-hanging fruit, the people that will say anything for any reason, like a Laura Loomer, and do not care. No, I even take that back, because I think Laura has her vicious, ideology that drives hatred, and she does seem to go, but either way, she got paid $100 to eat Purina dog food. And yes, that's a real story. I mean, we've talked about it. The guy literally tracked and proved the whole thing. And the crazy thing is, people are like, you really believe she take $100? Well, I thought that was crazy, but it shows you the lack of scruples. $100? Yeah, do it, whatever. I'll buy the, and tricked her into eating Purina dog food on air. The point is that people will do anything for money, even a small amount. She's probably got lots of money. This is just showing you the kind of people out there that are willing to just go, in the face of everything we're watching. And as Truth Teller says, 7K member, don't spend it all in one place. Now, here is a funny clip I just wanted to share. I think it's humorous. I'll only play the beginning of it. But James Lee says, okay, in case you didn't see this, Barry Weiss, Assad, Toady, whole breakdown of her career seemed to start right there. The point was she said that on Joe Rogan and didn't even know the definition of the word toady. She was just so used to being in a room full of people that go, correct, Barry, you said the right thing. We all agree with you. No, well, if you're in a place where people actually have different opinions, then you had better know what you're talking about. And she does not. And she was just tapped to be the head of, the new head of CBS News, apparently doesn't even know what the Mossad is. He says also a true masterclass by Tim Dillon, brilliantly exposing just how much of a fraud she really is.
And welcome to Honestly.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, a lot of people on the internet believe that you are my boss because they believe that I am a member of the Mossad.
Oh,
but
really?
This is actually the first time that I'm meeting you, or at least as far as I know, any member of the Mossad. So I'm very excited to meet you.
I'm the first one that you've ever met, but
there might be, I might have met people.
Might be others that you know the world.
First, I want to set the table for people because the Mossad is an agency that is just shrouded in so much conspiracy and propaganda. Simple question, Yossi. What is the Mossad?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tim Dillon Show. A friend of the show, Barry Weiss, did a fascinating interview with a member of the Mossad, and she really looked into the process, and it was incredibly interesting. So what I want to do now is I wanted to bring someone in to explore an area where I am completely clueless. I mean, completely in the dark. And I wanted somebody to kind of walk me through an area of study that I know nothing about, just like Barry did. So I want to thank you for coming, Chloe. You work at Dairy Queen.
That is true, yes.
What is Dairy Queen in your mind? What is it? Because people say that they serve ice cream there, and I'm not even super sure what that is.
What's ice cream?
Yeah, what is ice cream? Like, what is it?
Oh, it's like the frozen dessert ice cream.
Like a little treat.
You obviously get where he's going with that, right? Hopefully so. Right. The point is simply that you could obviously point out that she wasn't like, I don't know what Mossad is, but the way that she's doing it is just clumsy. He was doing a hyperbolic version of that, and just the way, and of course her show's called Honestly. I mean, come on. It's just everything. Her demeanor is very childish and not I don't know. Just everything about that person is somebody who's been propped into this. It just does not deserve it. And overall, the Larry Ellison overlap, it's just your career got saved by this Israel controlling media conversation. Overall, though, it is people that have been towing the line their entire career and are being propped up in more, failing corporate media. But I guarantee you're going to see that kind of fold in and overlap like Ellison's already doing with all these new independent media people and funding the same way. It's where this goes. Now, speaking of two-party illusion and partisan stupidity, here's Alex Jones. Top Epstein investigator confirms Trump is totally innocent of sex crimes with children and how the president's DOJ is using the Epstein files to blackmail the deep state. Wow. That is okay, you can look at the O'Keefe media and you can watch it for yourself. So a guy's saying these things. So it's just as likely, by the way, that this guy says that because he watched Alex Jones report that 2 weeks ago, or more than that. When this came out and the first thing you saw was that they were not releasing more, Jones came out with the stupidest argument that Trump was using the Epstein files to blackmail the deep state, and that's why you can't see it. Then it came out 2 days later that it was the exact opposite. I'm not even making that up. The point is that he's just throwing nonsense against the wall. The reality that this even makes sense is painful. The idea that you want us to believe that you're blackmailing them? You mean for money? Okay, so not putting them in jail. Okay, so how does that work out to saving us from this? So you're working with them or you're blackmailing them for some outcome? I mean, my God. And Larkin Rose just nailed it. He says, the question is Alex really stupid enough to believe this? Or does he just think his listeners are stupid enough to buy it? Helping Trump cover up heinous crimes against children. This is what controlled opposition actually looks like. Despicable. Perfectly said. I mean, and first of all, Epstein investigator confirms he's good. So now you're telling us that they do have evidence back there that proves one or the other and they're not showing it to you? Why would Trump not prove that to you? This is just so painful. This is like elementary stuff. But here he is screaming it out loud. And of course, only getting a little views for him. I think that says something. Even his own audience is going, come on, Alex. Stupid. And of course, Patrick Bet David just has to be the one to talk about it with him because not that he's responsible for what Alex Jones dumps on the show, or excuse me, what the reports dump on. The point is the same. Overall, it's just ridiculous to make the argument. Anything's possible, but the idea that he's innocent, I don't think anyone's proven that he's guilty. So why would the argument to come out and be proven? Why would you prove something that hasn't been proven yet? See what I say? That's kind of like the lady doth protest too much kind of a point. But either way, I think the sad thing is blackmailing the deep state. Like, really think about that for a second and explain to me why that makes him the good guy. Arrest them. If you have evidence that shows they're human trafficking child molesters, yeah, the good thing is to coerce them into some other thing and benefit from it, because that's what freedom looks like. Wow. Well, here's another example of this kind of ridiculous game that's being played. Here's Wall Street apes going treason in all capitals. Director of the, and by the way, this is what, the fourth time we've seen this thing floated? Kash Patel, drowning in his own lies, has to throw the partisan game at the wall to make sure people will jump at it. And I don't think it's working. Director of the FBI, Kash Patel, Nancy Pelosi involved with setting up January 6th. Yeah, I've proven these things on the show. The reality of the allowance, the reality of the phone calls, also with things on the other side, though. The reality of what this all was. And I'm not even talking about, this was a setup for Republicans. If you understand the government as the thing that it is, then you have to understand that that's both sides of it. But my point is that this was a trap. There's always an operation. But Pelosi being involved is not a secret. She made sure that there was no National Guard. We talked about that. Pelosi and her team were busy filming. 250 FBI agents. Okay. January 6th committee was then created to cover it up. This is all what Kash was saying. Pelosi's a criminal. She committed treason. Great. I said, I agree. And now watch as absolutely nothing of substance happens. I hope I'm wrong. Every time I hope that. How about Jones and the big thing coming with all the indictments? Where's that at, Jones? Where's Comey? I thought Comey was going to be in prison right now. Maybe he will be. But every single thing around it that you actually care to look at seems to suggest that's not even close to what's going to happen. Do you think Pelosi's going to be arrested? And if she does, do you think she'll be held accountable? Well, history screams the opposite. I hope 100% that happens. I don't believe it will. So the question becomes, how many times will you cheer for the statement of things that should happen without them happening? And then ask yourself how many people like this continue to do that even though it doesn't happen. And ask yourself what their motivation is. I'm not saying I know. I've seen Wall Street Ape share lots of good things too. I'm simply pointing out in a large sense that you need to start asking these questions. Dr. Alex Zeck points out, where's Fauci's arrest, right? Oh yeah, Trump gave him a medal instead. Where's the accountability for Pfizer? Oh yeah, that's right. He made 2 deals now with them instead. Where's the Epstein files? Oh yeah, it's suddenly a Democratic hoax. He says, but here's the reality in his opinion. Those things were never going to happen anyway. They dangled a carrot so you'd outsource your power and give attention to changing the system, hoping this time it would be different. The whole fell for it again, right? And hoping somehow the agents of the system would hold the system accountable for doing exactly what the system is designed to do. Perfect. Instead of spending time and energy dissolving the illusion of authority, exactly, and exiting the system as best you can altogether. I find this so fascinating to me, by the way. I really respect Alec. We have different opinions on certain things. I mean, maybe lesser now than I realize, but very much respect him for many reasons. But one was that, during the whole overlap of COVID, he was really, really adamant, and probably rightly so. I'm still genuinely still feel that there's more to be discovered around the conversation, but of the idea of germ or no germ theory kind of idea, train germ theory. And it very much is of the mind that's germ theory is fake, right? Or at least, again, I don't want to speak for him in case more has changed since that was the point then. And him and Derek got into it pretty aggressively, and then they invited him on, they had a conversation about it. And I thought it was really well done, very amicable. And since then, both of us have more so Derek, but I've talked to him and overlapped. And the point is that, he understands that our position is not dishonest. We may disagree on certain things, but at the end of the day, it's coming from a place of genuinely wanting to prove and find the reality of these things. And I can prove to you that we're being lied to and manipulated about tons of stuff like that. Overall, I just want to point out that this person has been acting with integrity and principle the entire time I've seen him work. That's just worthy of note, guys, all the time. And overall, what he's saying here is superseding two-party illusion stuff. It's about the idea of authority. I mean, that's anarchism, guys. That's agorism. That's where I think we need to start leaning towards, is recognizing that we don't need people to tell us how to live our lives. And the people that pretend they're going to save you or create the world you think you want are the ones that are lying to you every single day and being gaslit by the screamers online who pretend they're on your side. Dan Bongino, another example, comes out after Kash Patel says Maduro isn't just corrupt. He's an indicted narco-terrorist dictator with a $50 million DOJ bounty. Oh, because it makes sense that the U.S. government would put an indictment out for a foreign leader that they can't arrest, and there's no, that's the flimsy nature of indictments, isn't it, guys? They're just accusations. But he loves to say it so you think he's guilty without knowing what you're actually talking about. And maybe he doesn't even know. That wouldn't surprise me. But it says, under my leadership, in quotes, the FBI is choking off every dollar, every account, every enabler. So they're right back to the starving of Venezuela, like they've been doing for generations, or rather, decades and administrations, what I meant to say. So the point is, Maduro is a narco-terrorist. And the bounty you have on his head, but you like the $100 million bounty they had on Jelani's head before they made him the leader of Syria. But Dan Bongino says, we're tearing apart the international drug trade, infecting our communities piece by piece, tendril by tendril. Does anybody actually think that? 4 boats, one of which was turning around, none of which they've proven even remotely involved in the drug trade. It could be anything. They've lied about everything. Our government lies about everything. But let's just even say the 4 boats they've attacked were drug traders. Is that the international drug trade? A couple of skiffs? These people are ridiculous. I think they're drowning in the fact that nobody believes in them right now. So they're trying to be desperately seeking your affection online. Jason Bassler says, well, did you arrest the clowns of the DEA then? Jason Bassler, someone you should be following as well. One of the most principled people online. And I think this is an important story that I hadn't seen. So let's talk about that. So here they are going, corrupt drug trafficking Maduro, despite zero evidence to back that up. And I wouldn't dispute that maybe they are. Our government's involved in it too. It wouldn't surprise me. So here they are going, we're going to break down the international drug trade. Okay, well, how many times have I told you? The vast majority of cocaine trafficking comes through Colombia and through another U.S. ally. Venezuela, it's peanuts compared to the larger conversation, but there is some trafficking you can prove. August 19th, 2025, this comes out. Wiretap, the DEA laundered $19 million of cartel drug money into cash and crypto. Funny how no one's talking about that. It says for over a decade, the DEA ran a money laundering operation for a Colombian narcotics trafficking cartel. Well, surprise, surprise. In total, the agency has its sources, its sources took $19 million in drug money, funneling, like I just told you guys, they seize, they don't blow up a boat, right? And it says, funneling cash into bank and cryptocurrency accounts controlled by sources, agents, and the cartel. Working with the cartels that Trump wants you to believe they're fighting. And it says, at the end of it all, 2 heroin traffickers were charged as a direct result of the operation. 2. The scapegoats. Not the people in charge, not the cartel they're dealing with, but the 2 scapegoats they used. That's according to both a source familiar with the investigation and a recently unsealed seizure warrant, which shows how the DEA was deeply embedded in the cartel's attempts to evade law enforcement, both in shifting old school fiat currencies and digital alternatives. The DOJ declined to comment. So when they all go, cryptocurrencies being used for, it's them. They're the ones doing it. On top of that, don't miss the part where they help them evade law enforcement. I guarantee you, if they're able, they'll make the argument that they were just trying to, infiltrate to go after the larger culprits. No. They were helping them get away. This is the reality, not for every single part, every institution, but you guys have to look back and recognize this is the consistent part. And based on an idea that that you can't make decisions about your own life and what you put in your own body, it's not even about that. They don't care about that. They're poisoning you 1,000 different ways. This is corruption. The same kind of corruption that you can see, well, you watch these 2 clowns point at something that's not there. All right, rather, at the very least, the point is they don't care about drug trafficking, or at least the people telling them what to do don't. And they are ultimately making the point about Venezuela because of things that have nothing to do with drug trafficking. I think it's very obvious. If they cared, they'd be talking about Colombia, but Colombia is a U.S. ally and they don't want that to happen. Now, there's shifting allegiances, you understand, but for a long time, that's been the reality. And the reality is that if they break that open, even if they suddenly no longer support him, the proof will be long in the reality of how long they've been allowing that to happen. I just think this is insane. Not only do they take the money, they work with the cartels. I mean, Trump right now is telling you, even in his recent executive order, that they're at war with the cartels. Didn't he just say that? He didn't even specifically say Tren de Aragua. He just said cartels. And you could prove that they're literally taking money and working with them and letting them go. Guys, this is the reality of our government. Mediaite says, just a last point on, what in regard to enforcement, sources leaked that Trump FBI fired an agent because he refused to perp walk James Comey. So the people out there that would go, yes, that guy, they're the smallest person in the room. They're the children that just want to dunk on the guy. The reality is you should care about that person going to prison, which it doesn't seem like it's going to happen because of stupid things like this, because it seems petty and small. All they wanted was to make Comey look cut to the chase. I think it's about displaying the action so you all believe it's happening. That's what I think. The perp walk's all you're going to get. And the point was the guy didn't want to do it because it's not necessary, and he fired him because of it. What if he's the best agent on the force? Who cares? He didn't do what I wanted, even if it was sort of a violation. Like the idea, it's unnecessary and either way. I think this guy's a criminal, deserves to be in jail. So does the person putting him in jail. But overall, this just shows you the petty nature of what they're doing, and they're not fighting for you. Now, in regard to the 2 last parts on this, this was the overlap of the censorship part and digital IDs, and we're going to finish with the part about the ICE overlap. First, I just want to show you this continue from the last section we just had on Twitter and censorship, and this is Elon Musk. In regard to enforcement and then getting into the censorship, Wall Street Ape says Heritage Foundation exposes Hillary Clinton was directly behind getting EU to use their Digital Services Act to pressure Musk and America back into censorship. Oh, okay, so Clinton made me do it, Elon Musk. Exclamation marks. Okay, so you mean you weren't censoring for Israel and the ADL, or because you're childish flip outs about H-1 visas or Venezuela, or because Grok said the wrong thing? That's all that is. Clinton flew back and made you do that? No, that's not what happened. But see, this is an easy point. Hillary's the reason. Bad Clinton. We can all ignore that I'm complete hypocrite. And, speaking for Elon Musk, the funny part here is that this is the kind of thing you get. Okay, but let's just say it's the case. Hillary Clinton's a monster and should go to jail. Are you going to put her in jail for that? Now, I'm not saying Elon Musk. The point is what you just described is a crime, right? Put her in jail. How much you want to bet that doesn't happen? What they want from you is to go, bad Democrat, and then fall into whatever trap they create. Elon Musk, now that he's out, that kind of drifted back out of the scene, like in the front and center, is just, he's just social engineering the entire conversation with these ridiculous things he's doing. Now, by the way, Clinton did it. Oh, is that still what's happening, Musk? Seeing as how on October 4th, uncensored AI was suspended from your platform because it competes what you're doing? No, that wasn't Hillary Clinton, guys. That was not Hillary Clinton. That was Elon Musk and Israel. Twitter X was owned by the deep state before Musk and is sold to him as a part of the psyop that got deep state Trump into power, says David Icke. Promoted deep state Musk as a free speech absolutist and convinced hundreds and millions that we are winning when they were simply being lassoed by that which they claim to be opposing. Good way to say that. A few of us said this from the start and took enormous abuse for doing so. Good job, we don't care. I agree. Simon Godek. First Grok 2.0, then TikTok, and now this. By now, everyone should realize who is the driving force behind the censorship. There's a lot of overlap with Israel. He's making both points. I think the reality is clearly this is about not free speech, but about controlling the flow of information, in this case, technology. As Jason Bassler points out, Big Brother just got an upgrade. Starting December, Amazon's Ring cameras will scan and recognize faces. Weird how that's the exact same time as ICE is doing the same thing. Totally no connection, right? Don't want to be in their database? Too bad. Walk past a Ring and your face can be stored, tagged, and analyzed without consent. One step closer to total surveillance. And this is where it gets even crazier because what they're actually doing is some next generation kind of stuff. We'll get to it in 1 second. It's right here. Oh, wait. Oops. Make sure I didn't go past it. There was one other post. Let me see. Make sure I didn't get rid of it. No, I don't think so. Oh, you know what? I think it's over here. Okay, that's what it is. I moved it. So I just want to show you this. We'll get to this in a second. But scanning 265 eye points. That's what ICE is now using. So I'm of the mind that's what we're talking about when it comes to this kind of stuff. This is rolling out all at the same time, and I believe it's all interconnected with Israeli tech. First of all, the UK, as we already showed you, new digital ID scheme be rolled out across the UK. Now, just because we're not, the US government is not screaming it in your face, it's happening right now, guys, in slow, incremental, boiling frog type ways. It's happening. The digital ID, digital social credit, digital money, it's all, and they just know that Americans are very on guard about it. In the UK, they're on guard about it too, but they don't seem to care. Digital IDs, right out in the surface. In the EU, they're now mandating that if you, as an American, I guess apparently it says that American, I guess, I'll let him say it, but I think the framing was anybody, but he seems to make it about Americans in particular. Going to 30 countries right now, they will demand that you have to give your biometric data or you won't be able to enter. Is this not exactly what we were all warning about? I guess we were all black-pilled with purity tests, huh? That'll age well.
A trip to Europe, you're going to have to hand over way more than your passport when you get there. As part of a new entry-exit system, visitors to most European countries will have to provide 4 fingerprints and a facial photo at a self-operated kiosk. The information will be stored for 3 years, with the photo being used for ID verification on later visits.
I promise you it won't be 3 years. I promise you it'll be indefinite. My opinion. And it's based on literally every precedent before this where they get caught doing that after lying to you in the first place, like right there.
Those who refuse to provide their biometric data will be denied entry. The goal of the program is to enhance security and speed up border crossings, it is said. The new system is set to be rolled out.
Even he didn't seem to buy that, by the way. But guess what? Immigration. That seems to be the argument of the day. During COVID, they all said COVID, right? During terrorism, they all said terrorism. Now they say immigration, except watch it fold right back into some kind of terrorism, which seems to be where it's going. The point is the solution is always the same for whatever problem they want to point to because it wasn't really about the problem.
Over 6 months, security and speed up border crossings, it is said. The new system is set to be rolled out over 6 months, starting in October, and applies to 29 countries, including popular destinations like France, Italy, and Spain.
I just can't believe there's not more. I mean, let me put it this way, because I think that most people are calling this out. I can't believe there's not more large influencer people, like manipulatively, that don't see the benefit in using. I jumping ahead. They don't see the benefit in kind of suddenly coming out and being like, like recognizing that there's an opportunity and being honest about this. But clearly everybody wants that. And so what I think, to make the second point, is if you want to talk about like the Charlie Kirk being threatened, and that's why, wearing his vest when he goes out to do the campus report, I don't think they're in danger. I think the people who are in danger are the ones who are suddenly doing that. The ones who have been paid by $7,000 a post and then start going, but maybe Israel's committed genocide. Then I think they're, if you're going to be real about it, I think that's what the overlap was. But overall, yeah, the idea that, clearly there's a lot of contentious things. There's a lot of very powerful people with a lot of interest here. It's not hard to understand why these things might happen. Jason Bassler says 17 countries have rolled out or passed digital IDs laws in the last 3 months. 17. EU, UK, Laos, China, Taiwan, Mexico, Zambia, Canada, Ethiopia, Thailand, Vietnam, Australia, Costa Rica, Switzerland, Papua New Guinea. Just totally a coincidence, I'm sure. It's right in front of us. Now I'll play this again. I think it's important. If you have an Amazon Echo, we just talked about, or another form of smart device in your home, you need to watch this. Beyond the current dystopian surveillance, very important to understand geofencing, coming to a freedom city near you. This is Aman Jabi speaking in what's called the agenda, their vision of the future. Then we're going to finish with how all of this is being used in real time, right now under the guise of immigration, and how Israel's companies are the ones facilitating it. So keep that in mind. In this kind of world they're building, that the tech that they're employing is being used to create this kind of a world, and that you have a genocidal government being in, like, whether controlling it or at the very least having access to all of it, which is provable.
One man who knows the dangers only too well is Aman Jabi, who was at the forefront of digital development in Silicon Valley, California, for 25 years. He left when he recognized the dark side of surveillance technology, choosing instead the peace and beauty of Montana. He's an expert in facial recognition.
It's a technique that is used to uniquely identify the biometrics of any face. So, in a device like your smartphone, and most modern smartphones in the last 5 or 7 years, they have a 3D camera module in the front of the phone, which you cannot see. Within that module is a near-infrared projector which projects tens of thousands of dots on your face. Those dots are then distorted based on the contours and the features of your face, and there's a near-infrared camera then takes a picture of that distortion, captures it, and then reverse engineers the exact profile of your face. In the longer term, facial recognition will be...
This was my point about if they can recreate that biometric in some kind of digital, even 3D model, then they realistically have access to everything you have with, face print and anything else. That's important to think about. And I think that's a smaller end of the issue, but it's just on top of everything else they already probably have access to. If you just happen to have some secret device with the face, if you have biometric access, they do too.
Be used to unlock your digital identity, which is going to be a tool of control for the agendas that are coming down the pipeline.
Elements of that control are already with us.
Alexa, good morning. Good morning.
You are never alone in your home, and this is why. All your devices at home and all smart appliances, they are all connected on a wireless network. Many of these devices will have cameras, many will have microphones, and so they are monitoring everything all the time. Your smart appliances are communicating with the smart meter and sending it real-time usage data. If there's a Ring camera also in your home, a mesh network is formed, and all your devices are being tracked within the home, its location, its usage, and all the data is going to Amazon servers. When you leave your home, all modern vehicles are connected to the internet, so your automobile is being tracked all the time. When you're going under a string of smart LED poles and smart LED lights on the highway and in the streets of your towns and cities, Those form a wireless network and are tracking your vehicle. They are tracking all the devices on you, from smartphones to smartwatches when you're walking on the streets. So data is being collected 24/7 continuously on every human being whenever you are within these wireless networks. And it's obviously not good for health also because of all the electromagnetic radiation. In the long term, the plan is to pretty much lock up humanity in smart cities, which is kind of a superset of a 15-minute city. They've sold all the state and local governments and countries that smart cities are about sustainability and the good of the city. But in reality, the language from the UN and WEF and their white papers is all inverted. So their monitoring is really about limiting mobility and no car ownership. Right? Surveillance, control via LED grid is why the smart lighting is there. Water management is about water rationing, noise pollution is about speed surveillance, traffic monitoring is about limiting mobility, and then, of course, energy conservation is all about rationing heat, electricity, and gasoline. Another concept one should be familiar with is called geofencing, and think of it as an invisible fence around you, where you cannot go beyond a certain point. And that will be related to your face recognition, digital identity, and access control. Your smart contracts, SoftBrick can turn off your digital currency beyond a certain point from your house. Our world has been turned into a digital panopticon. That means you can be monitored, analyzed, managed, and monetized.
Surveillance capitalists are already making billions of dollars selling our information to big corporations, because this kind of detailed knowledge enables them to predict and influence our behavior.
Well, you guys have seen that before. I think, for the, Paul, just the redundancy, I think it's important to reach the people that may be new and understand what that looks like. I mean, that's not 20 years from now. That was possible a decade ago. I mean, that's real time, guys. How that's being used. Overlap that with digital twins and all the other stuff we've talked about. These are real conversations that are being used right now. The rest of it is what's building for the future. And now, as always, it's not some we're doomed conversation. The reality is we can, and I can see it making a difference. If we choose to look beyond the partisan division, our actions are influencing the conversation now. I've said this before. With all the resources, with all of the endless resources, money, influence, the ability to censor, government, corporations, the overwhelming influence on the conversation and suppression of our platforms, the lawsuits, and we're still breaking through. I guess always think about how powerful that is. With everything they throw at us, that we are still, as independent media, still breaking through the conversation. That must be frustrating. And the reality is it's only going to get harder, but that shows you that we are making more and more headway. I think that's important to see. Now, on this point, Ghost of Zebro points out what Chris Menahan said in regard to this geofencing point. He says, talking about geofencing, have you seen this? So this is, oops. That's weird. Hold on. This platform sucks. Where we go. This geofencing campaign would create a digital perimeter around key Christian gathering places, delivering targeted pro-Israel content and sympathetic anti-Hamas messaging to engaged audiences. This is from a conversation about what is being funded through we just talked about, Show Faith by Works. It's a group that was, now this is what's interesting. This is him also pointing out that according to FARA filings, I said last time that I wasn't able to find that, but that's two people now that have reported that. It could be being repeated. Just check it out for yourself. I wasn't able to locate the actual Foreign Agent Registration Act documents about that. Wouldn't surprise me though, because let's realize, I just think it's interesting since Israel's not forced to do that in most every case. But I think right now, this is kind of what I was saying. It's being right. Like the Israeli Foreign Ministry is on the record funding people to influence the conversation. That's not even secret. So in a way, I wouldn't be surprised if it was on the FAR Act, because Israel as an agent has to be. But AIPAC and the other tools they use have always classically not been. I think we've just sort of jumped that conversation. They're just doing it. But either way, my point is not to say that's not true. I just thought I wasn't able to find it. So the reality is Israel's paying $4.1 million to conservative activist Chad, was it Shintgers? That's an interesting name. But his new firm called Show Faith by Works to target Christians with explicitly pro-Israel content because they're losing traction, guys. And it says they expect to receive $3.25 million over 5 months, paid in equal installments. The quick point is simply that this, and it's an anti-Palestinian section of the plan, is ultimately they're funding this with this idea to build out this system. Israel's paying an American firm to hook Christians up to VR machines and provide them with the 10/7 experience. So think about how disgusting that is. Their propaganda fake snuff film they've put around and make them through VR. Think about how convincing it'll be to just show them gore and nasty things that didn't actually happen, and then convince them that that's what, it's horrifying propaganda. Israel's taking U.S. tax dollars and using it to hire Americans as foreign agents to spread this base propaganda about the genocide. As he writes, how is it legal? And then points out that the campaign they're doing in these locations will be geofenced to control the flow of information. This is what we're talking about. It's just one aspect of this already happening. And I will include, again, my technocratic tiptoe. This is the 4-hour show. All the source material you could possibly imagine, breaking it all down, chronological order. I think this is the one you should watch if you want to get the bigger picture. I did an hour version of it for the Solari Report in their legislative briefing, which got a really good response. Briefing for the state leaders, the digital control grid. How long before the frog hits the boiling point? With Ryan Christian. Now, lastly, let's bring it to the reality of today. That's not, like I said, that's not 20 years from now. ICE just bought new tool to monitor hundreds of millions of smartphones. You could pretend, if you want to be blind, that it's only those brown people. No, it's everybody. And this is the same thing Palantir's doing. Everybody. Experts say it's dangerous. Right. Not it's dangerous, but shockingly unconstitutional, but we don't care about that anymore, apparently. This is October 2nd. It says ICE reportedly seeking to buy access to a powerful suite of highly controversial surveillance tools that will allow the agency to monitor people's locations based on data from hundreds of millions of mobile phones. Don Bell, policy counsel at the Constitution Project, at the Project on Government Oversight, an advocacy group, warned that the surveillance tools could let ICE get around the privacy protections of the warrant process and the Fourth Amendment. All the fake patriots and constitutionalists out there, the fake ones, out there cheering it on because that's a bad thing. Even if it is a bad thing, which most people would agree on, that there's legal issues and people breaking the law, it's the principle that you cannot change. Or really, the reality is whether you want it to, it shall not be infringed. It's inherent. You guys are failing to respect the reality of the Constitution, but it's still there, which is that these things matter. But I don't care whether look, the point, let's just even say you have all these illegal immigrants, and without this tool, it's impossible to catch them. The argument would still be, well, it's unconstitutional. Sorry. That's the reality. And even if you think, that's one example. The point is when you break that line, it ruins everything else too. And I would argue that having that exist, which even still may be a problem, is more important than violating the Constitution as a whole. And if you can't wrap your mind around that, then you don't believe in inherent rights. And I'm even willing to say again, maybe you do believe that. So let's have an actual conversation about the merits of that. Make your case. But if you're out there claiming Constitution shall not be infringed in every other conversation, then you're a hypocrite. Maybe you don't even see that yet. It says, usually if law enforcement warns to take your phone, it is interested in getting your location data that they would need a warrant. Yes. So it may be a small point for you, but you're violating the rights. And by the way, in case you still don't know this, and it's shocking that Americans don't know this, even illegal aliens have constitutional rights. Anybody has constitutional rights within this country because that was the original design. It was inherent, God-given rights that we outline for humanity, but we're only able to enforce them within these boundaries. It's easy to look back and actually read documentation about what the founding fathers were saying. People are ignorant today, deliberately, intentionally. The problem is that, yes, there are few limitations on, the first point, there are few limitations on illegal immigrants and that point, but due process, 100%. Fourth Amendment, 100%. That in particular says all persons. But the problem is that it becomes a nuance, it becomes blended together, and you argue. I mean, today it's gone so far as to people like Loomer saying that you're not even American if you're born here, but have a different religion or different ideas. It's just showing you where it's all driving, and that's coming from Israel lunacy. But overall, green card, visa, born here, naturalized, illegal immigrant, all of them have protection under these rights because they're inherent. And it says in a redacted acquisition document, Obtained by the tech news site 404 Media, the immigration agency proposes entering into a contract to buy a, quote, all-in-one tools from a company called Penlink that will allow agents to compile, process, and validate billions of daily location signals from hundreds of millions of mobile devices. See my point? So they're not focusing, they're grabbing everything and then going, then when they want to go, they can go that one and we'll decide then. So they're violating the entire country's rights to make sure they can, if they want to, go after immigrants or anybody else, by the way, when that becomes the case. And the real point is that this company is Israeli tech. And that means that so too does Israeli government committing a genocide have access to current data location of every phone in this country, or however this applies now broadly it is. I think it'll be the country. Can you not think about how terrifying that is with the pager attack, with the fact that Netanyahu seems to be suggestively floating the idea that phones in your pockets are connected to us everywhere in the world and saying that everyone will pay? These are terrorists threatening Americans. Should they? I mean, guys, it's all over this entire conversation, potentially killing Charlie Kirk. Documents also mention payments for services involving face detection, advanced face search, and dark web data feed. One of the products, Tangles, is within the suite of these products, automatically, quote, ingests historical data from multiple communication channels, mobile forensics, internet-based communications, location data, financial records, web intelligence. Oh, so it's not just a face scan. I see. It's an all-encompassing mass surveillance tool that's absorbing everything AI version it can from everywhere on the line, online, and then using that to decide whether you're something. Sure. Who cares about your constitutional rights? It goes on to say the company that originally created Tangles, Cobwebs, was founded by, wait for it, I'm sure you saw it coming, a former member of Israel's elite cyber intelligence agencies called Unit 8200. And it was reportedly kicked off of Meta back in 2021 after allegedly being found using Facebook and WhatsApp accounts to snoop on activists and opposition politicians all over the world. The company later merged with Penlink in 2023. Yes, it did. Cobweb Technologies joins Penlink to expand its digital investment platform. More specifically, Penlink, formerly Cobwebs Technologies. Right. So Cobwebs, which is an Israeli intelligence entity, becomes Penlink, which is now supplying all those tools for ICE. So Israel has access to it. There's really no debate here if you understand the conversation. And again, okay, you could be, to be rightly objective, you can argue that maybe this is the exception. I'm not saying is 100% in every single case, but I'm saying is Israel publicly says this. Israel publicly does this. Israel publicly brags about it. And then Israel creates, should we just play the clip again? For those that might be new. See, this is why it's important, even though I know that it can be redundant for most people. You never know who might just be, if I can even find it now, might just be new, who needs to see this to make this connection. But the point again, is creating fake companies that they can use to manipulate the world situation. So why wouldn't they create a fake intelligence company or a real one that they control to be able to use that data for their purposes? Like going after Palestinian supporters, like going after Americans that don't like Israel, or at the very least targeting them in particular, like the geofencing, with the information they need you to see so you might change your mind. Is that really that crazy to think about? Here's what they said publicly about how they control things like this.
How did you convince Hezbollah to buy this?
Well, obviously, they didn't know that they were buying it from Israel.
Who did they buy it from, or think they were buying it from?
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no way being traced back to Israel, shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to our favor. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors, we're the producers, we're the main actors. The world is our stage.
Yeah, pretty simple. No, rightly so. Question, maybe 60 Minutes made it up. But except when you look into it, you find out that Israel set it up. You find out that Israel promotes that interview, and they brag about it. So it's not hard to recognize. You can ask whether Mossad is lying about that. Certainly a good question. But you can't deny that Israel's saying that and that they publicly support that that's what they do all over the world. And then you can find 75 other examples of them clumsily bragging about this. But then when you point to it, you're called an anti-Semite by your own government, who then is allowing this to happen throughout our country. Starting to make sense? Hopefully. So in this case, Tangles, a part of Cobwebs, which is now Penlink, which is an Israeli created and run company, intelligence, rather. And let's be clear, to be very clear about this, Penlink is based in the United States, right? But see, what happens is they build an Israeli tech company that then merges with that company, and then they have influence through that company. It's not hard to see. And you can prove that still is being worked on by Unit 8200 alumni or current members. And it says, and remember, this is the same company that got kicked off of Meta for doing this. Israeli spyware firm, NSO Group, found liable for hacks of WhatsApp users. That's a different group. It's the same conversation. We'll come back to that. It says the ICE documents also describe the agency testing out a tool called Ventel, whose creators, the Federal Trade Commission in 2024, accused of unlawfully tracking and selling sensitive location data, including information about mobile users, visits to health-related locations, places of worship. So you see, the problem is not that they didn't know that, but they go, give me the one that was doing the thing that we want to do, unlawfully tracking and selling. Give me the data. They know this is a crime. They know it's unconstitutional. That's why they wanted them, because they're trying to do, this is what I think everywhere you're looking is happening. I mean, it's not what I think, you can see it. They're driving either the precedent-setting reality that Constitution is a choice for people in power, or that they just don't care and they're driving it forward for something a lot more nefarious. The Trump administration has reportedly restarted a $2 million contract with Paragon Solutions. We reported this in the beginning. Derek was very clear about this. Meet the spyware companies preparing to unleash their tech during Trump's second term. This is not a joke. The NSO Group is quite literally not an extension of an ex-alumni, an actively Israeli-run intelligence entity that is hacking people. Same thing with all the different groups, from WhatsApp users to all sorts of overlapping points. Proven, guys. You can read the court document. It's right here. I mean, it's crazy how clear this is. Now, with all of that provable information, why would Donald Trump make a deal with an Israeli spyware company? I think I've explained that pretty well. Hopefully you're not confused about why that would connect. It says the company founded in Israel, whose products have been accused of facilitating the surveillance of journalists and activists. Not accused, found guilty in court. But I'm not surprised the Independent would pull that punch. It says Paragon's zero-click graphite program. This is what I keep talking about. They don't even require you to click. They send it to your email. You're compromised. Graphite program can quietly invade the mobile phone of its target and extract its contents, even from encrypted apps. So right now, if that's the reality and it's infiltrated all of us throughout this entire country, then there's nothing secret from a genocide-committing government. And then, of course, they have the access to the AI because of a memorandum of understanding around the AI conversation. And we know that they're using their unsiloed information to train all the AI models. Guys, the Israel government knows more about you today than you do. I don't think that's even hard. That's not even a hyperbolic statement. It says under Trump, ICE has also struck agreements with fellow government agencies to access highly sensitive data, including from the IRS and Medicaid. Fantastic. That sure sounds like a freedom, a Constitution-guided action, doesn't it? Well, yeah, again, connected. Cobweb became that. Here is the Department of Homeland Security's, which one was it? The $2 million contract with an Israeli intelligence company, Paragon Solutions. And again, I'll include all the reports that Derek wrote about this back in 2025, and it was January, and then this one was November 2024. And this is more than just NSO Group and Paragon. There's a whole bunch in here, and he lists them off. All of these different groups. Cellbrite is one of the most notorious, and they're working with Trump. Clearview AI, Magnet Forensics, Penlink is right there. U.S.-based company Penlink has also signed a deal with ICE worth nearly $5 million in exchange for licenses from Penlink, as Forbes previously reported, has sophisticated wiretapping systems set up for phone lines across U.S. and is reportedly working on social media surveillance projects for the U.S. government. Israeli tech. I just don't know why this is not the most obvious thing in the world. Now, just a quick search for ICE IDF surveillance tools. Jason Bassler has a couple of good points. ICE is rolling out iris tech called Morris, capable, and this is, again, this all Israeli tech, capable of identifying individuals, quote, in seconds from virtually anywhere. 265 eye point, it's more accurate than fingerprints and links instantly to arrest and immigration databases. Is this the death of privacy as we know it? Leaked emails indicate that ICE is now using Mobile Fortify, a facial recognition tool that lets agents ID anyone just by pointing a smartphone camera at their face. It may start with illegal immigrants, but make no mistake, this technology will be used against you next. This is from Jason Palladino, new comically redacted ICE justification to buy more sole source Cellbrite universal forensic data. Israeli tech that breaks into your smartphone. Great. Look at the most transparent administration in history, even though it's a lie. I mean, it just goes on and on, guys. It's wild. Now I'll play this clip. It's a short one, but I think it's important to hear it again. This is the overlap, and I don't understand about this clip. This is just the now reality. Every other scenario, COVID-19, before, the same thing. They were using the current thing to justify the same actions. So now it's ICE. Now it's immigration. What'll be tomorrow? I don't know. But the solution, I'm willing to bet you, will be the exact same. More of this.
Chilling thing I've seen responding to these immigration raids. I'm an immigrant rights attorney, and usually I'm a pretty optimistic guy. I don't get scared easily. I love watching horror movies. Over the past 6 months, I've seen some really disturbing stuff. At one location, people hid when I showed up, and I still found them using a thermal drone that detects body heat. Where was this?
On that post, by the way, he's reading somebody's post about that. That's why it sounded funny. He's saying somebody saw that happen on the ground.
Technology first tested by Israel in occupied Palestine. When people get taken by ICE, they often refuse to say their names. So ICE identifies them using a facial recognition technology. Where was this tech first used? By Israel in occupied Palestine. When people refuse to let ICE search their phones, ICE will plug their phones into this box and it unlocks their phone. Where was this tech first used? By Israel in occupied Palestine.
I'm willing to bet you that that's either, it could just be some other version of hacking, but again, that may very well be your biometrics being used to unlock that phone. I actually, somebody in the chat tell me this. I'm not an expert, obviously, in this field. Is it possible to feed the data of the biometric data that's not like a visual 3D thing into the phone and that somehow unlock biometric? So a fingerprint or a face scan is on record in the phone. And they plug it into the box, and the box has your biometric data like on a digital file in the box. Would that unlock the phone? Interesting question, right? Because I'm not sure how that really works. If it has to be like the visuals, the camera or something like that. My argument is, first and foremost, they could just make that with 3D, whatever else. But I'm wondering if that doesn't need to be done.
The amount of dystopian tech that the US government has taken from Israel to use in its own country is terrifying.
I agree. I think it's obvious that this is happening right in front of us. Now, last few points. Derek Rose, a Trump-appointed judge on the 4th, he's reported on the 4th, rules that Trump's deployment of troops to Portland is, he's halting it. Judge blocks the deployment. Judge grants restraining order halting Trump's deployment of Oregon National Guard. I argue they're going to find a way around it either way. And they're now deploying National Guard all over the country. It's wild to me, of all the people that the right is, rather that too many of them seem to be okay with this because Trump's doing it. But it's good to see they're pushing back on this. I think it's Trump or Biden. I think this is a problem. And then this is just the Washington Post reporting on that, blocking it. And then, of course, Trump says he'll send National Guard to Chicago. It simply says as of today, but details remain unclear. But as far as I can tell, it's already happening. There's already all sorts of action. At very least, ICE, which shows you this was always kind of mashed together about all crime or just immigration or going both towards that direction. It's just whatever they can do to make this happen. There was a recent shooting that took place in Chicago, and I'm still unclear on the details, but they opened fire on a bunch of people. They claimed the other person had a gun. It's just we've already seen examples of them making entire stories up about people who ran them over the car, but that didn't even happen, and they opened fire on a family. So it's hard to tell. Overall, Cristian just came out and called it a war zone. Just like they said with Washington, D.C. Is Chicago one of the worst? Yes, there's a lot of crime. Shootings all the time, but to call it a war zone, it's what they're doing. It's what they said in D.C., which was also untrue. They made this narrative up to argue, and it wasn't even on the top 30 of the most criminal-ridden cities, but doesn't matter. They'll create the narrative about what they want in the area, and all the screaming idiots out there will promote whatever they say to say. With each one of them, 1 million followers, they just drown out the conversation. But I don't think that will only sway the people who only tap into that level of the conversation, right? That's why people in the independent media alliance, people in independent media who are honest, genuinely that you need to support people like that out there doing their hard work to try to find truth and not being swayed by the partisan game. As Jason says, the Operation Midway Blitz, a raid in Chicago apartment complex. 1 a.m. on the 30th, federal agents rappel from helicopters, kick down doors, throw flashbang grenades, round up adults screaming, naked children, Some dragged from bed, including U.S. citizens, by the way, detained, zip-tied, including U.S. children, citizens, placed into U-Haul vans, including U.S. citizens, 37 arrested. Not Fallujah, Chicago, a military op in the United States. How long do we need to call this out? As he writes, we're all the enemy now. It doesn't matter. Right now, that's the focus. If they've already rationalized the idea of militarized police, now they're just conducting military operations in the United States. How in the world can anybody who cares about any of the things they pretend to care about not care that they arrested a bunch of American citizens? Oh, they just got caught up and we got the bad guys. So that violated their rights. Every single one of them. And on top of that, the idea that in any world it's okay to conduct this operation on a building full, this is very Israel-Gaza style. Who cares about everybody else in the way? To go after illegal immigrants. Like, if your mind is that they're all rapists, murdering terrorists, then you have fallen for the entire game. Sure, some of them, just like some Americans too. The idea that the point is they're probably just people that have like an expired visa. At the end of the day, either way, it doesn't rationalize the violation of U.S. citizen rights. Or their rights as well, by the way. But you can already hear the people that we're talking about screaming the nonsense over the top of this, acting like you're somehow un-American or somehow you're a Democrat, even though hopefully today we've at least put to bed some of these ridiculous double standards. But we'll leave it there today. Hopefully people can continue to ask these questions. I believe most people are. Don't be afraid to call it out. Stand up. Find the courage to believe in what you mean. You have your opinions. You have your principles. Scream about it. Be honest about where you stand and stop letting the partisan game, basically bull rush over the top of everything. Because at the end of the day, these people are going to continue to do that. They're going to continue to push over the top. And if we let it happen, they'll control the conversation. Right now they're controlling what appears to be the majority of the conversation, but we're changing that. All of us are changing that. Those people standing up in front of their politician going, we know what you're doing. They're changing that. You're changing it. Keep doing it. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.